have a special guest today, Dr. John Demartini, for any of you who have not met him before. Dr. John, this is all of our beautiful guests, 31 of our guests here in Umbria in Italy. They've come a long way to be here today.
Fantastic.
So welcome. So I'll just tell you a little bit about how I met Dr. John Demartini. I was 19 years of age, which was only a couple of years ago. So I was 19 years of age and I was studying at university a Bachelor of Business, and I was on a completely different trajectory through life. I was interested in personal development work, but I never really thought about it that much. And I was just living a completely different life. And I was at home in my lounge room. I'd come back from uni that day and I put on Oprah. And as I sat there, she introduced this man called Dr. John Demartini. And as he came on and he started speaking about his new book, Count Your Blessings, I was completely and utterly gobsmacked and totally inspired by what he was saying. And I just listened, and I ended up going off and purchasing his book. It was actually the 20th of March. I don't know how I remember that date, but I do. And I bought his book, and as soon as I started reading that, I was just so inspired. I had tears of inspiration, and I knew that someday I was going to do this work. And when I had that thought, I had another thought that said, Antonella, don't be so ridiculous. What do you mean you're going to do this work one day? So I closed the book. I put the book in my bookshelf and then never thought about it ever again. And then it wasn't until 10 years later that I was reintroduced to him, and I read his book and I was just so re-inspired again. I actually ended up doing some work of Dr. John with somebody else. And then from then I went on and did do Dr. John's work and have done his trainer's course. So I did actually end up doing his work someday. And so it was, so my message is, when you get that inkling inside yourself that there's something more, there is something more, that's your soul speaking to you. It already knows. So like I'm really quite inspired by the fact that, after all these years, I am doing this work and I live by this philosophy. So so it's very much a part of my life, and this is what I share with you today. So without further ado, we'll bring Dr. John on. If maybe, Dr. John, you might want to have a little introduction with them, and then we'll get into some questions.
Sure,
How does
absolutely.
that sound? Yeah?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm in Houston, Texas. It's 1:04 in the morning here. So I've been going all day, and so I get to be with you for the next few hours. Introduction to me, I have been in teaching for 52 years. I have been traveling the world. I've spoken in about 160 countries. I write a lot of books. I do a lot of presentations, and I research every day of my life. And anything that would help people maximize their potential in life. That's what I love doing. I just can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing. So that's what I do. And I get to be with you today. So in a beautiful setting, it sounds like you're right in the middle of the mountains there, right in a beautiful environment there. So I don't have to say anything about me. I think we just get to work. So we have something of value here.
Okay.
You'll find out about me when I speak.
Okay, fantastic. So Dr. John, you talk a lot about relationships and communicating in terms of each other's values. Can you explain to everybody, how to communicate in terms of each other's values, how to make our relationships better with each other? Because many people struggle with, relationships, with their intimate relationships, Can you explain a bit about that?
Every human being, regardless of their gender spectrum, lives moment by moment by a set of priorities, a set of values. We could call it a hierarchy of values, things that are most to least important in their life. And each individual with that unique set of values filters their reality accordingly. So their perceptions, their decisions, and their actions are a result of those values. I'm going to draw a series of lines here. And this is going to be you versus someone other than yourself that you're in a relationship with. This is the list of values and priorities that you live your life by. This is your highest value. This is a lower value. There is no lowest. This is your highest value and a lower value, because there's an infinity of lower values, so there's no lowest. This is called the hierarchy of values of the individual, sometimes called the value structure of the individual. Whatever's highest on that list of values, we are spontaneously inspired to act on. Bear with my drawing. And whatever is highest on our value, our ontological identity revolves. We identify ourselves by our highest value. For instance, if we are a mother, 35 years old, and we have 3 beautiful children that are under 5, and our highest value is being a mother, an inspired mother, then if somebody asks us, who are you? You'll say, I'm a mother. If your highest value is entrepreneurship, even though you may have 3 kids, you'll say, I'm an entrepreneur. My highest value is teaching. So if somebody asks me, who am I? I'll say I'm a teacher. So your ontological identity, the very essence of your being, revolves around your highest value. And your highest value is also called the telos. And that's the term that Aristotle gave it. And your telos is the end in mind. So your top value is your end in mind, your chief aim, as Napoleon Hill would call it. And therefore, it is not only your ontological identity, but it's also your teleological purpose. Your purpose is an expression of your highest value. So my highest value is teaching in the area of human behavior. My identity, teacher. My purpose, teaching. If you're a mother, your ontological identity is mother. But what you're doing is mothering. Your purpose is mothering, raising beautiful children. Rose Kennedy from the Kennedy family, her mission, and I had her mission statement handed to me in a book coming from the Kennedy family that I actually possessed. I dedicate my life to raising a family of world leaders. That was her mission as a mother. In addition to your identity and your teleological purpose, your epistemological area of expertise revolves around it. Epistemology is a study of knowledge, and therefore you are most knowledgeable around what you value most. So I'm most knowledgeable around human behavior. I know very little about cars. I haven't driven a car in 35 years. I haven't cooked since I was 24, and I'm 70 now. So in the process of your identity, your purpose, and your area of expertise, revolve around your highest value. Now, when you're doing your expertise and sharing your expertise and a purpose to making a contribution, you feel you're fulfilling your purpose and you feel most fulfilled. And each individual wants to be fulfilled. So to start out, each individual, in order to fulfill their lives, they want to fulfill what they value most. They want to feel that they're fulfilling a purpose, which is making a difference. They want to be able to grow their knowledge and be acknowledged for their contribution. And they want to be able to be themselves. Raise your hand if you want to be yourself. You're ontological down. You want to be loved for who you are. Now, every time you act according to your highest value, congruently and in line with it, the blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, the medial prefrontal cortex, the executive center, and helps you maximize inspired vision, strategic planning, mitigating risks, spontaneous execution of actions of the plan, and self-governance. So the path of self-actualization, the path of self-mastery, the path of self-governance is always according to your highest value. And you have a yearning, an innate yearning to fulfill that. And you spontaneously do it. Nobody has to motivate you or remind you to do that. Nobody has to remind me or motivate me to teach. I spontaneously do it every day. I can't even sleep at night without thinking about what I get to do tomorrow teaching. Now, with that said, in that hierarchy of values, as you go down the list of values, instead of being disciplined, reliable, and focused, which is here, we tend to procrastinate, hesitate, and frustrate down below. The highest value is intrinsic. It's part of our innate nature. But as we go down the list of values, it becomes more extrinsic. Now, we use an example because many of you have had children, and you probably had at least one child that was into video games. And the boy, let's say, loves video games. He spontaneously is inspired to do his video games because it's highest on his value. But you have to motivate him and incentivize him and coerce him to go and do his homework, chores, and clean his room. You probably never had to say, now, Johnny, stop doing those video games. No, stop doing that homework and go do your video games. That's probably never been said, but the other way around has. So you have to motivate them extrinsically with reward if you do it and punishment if you don't, in order to get them to do something that's low on their value. Therefore, you're least efficient and effective as a human being when you're doing low priority things. Because now you have to be coerced from some of the outside sources to get you to act. That's why you procrastinate, hesitate, and frustrate. Now, in your very highest values, because you spontaneously are inspired, you're most effective and efficient. This was called the law of least action or the law of efficiency. So anytime an individual is working in a company and they can do what's highest on their values, they feel productive, inspired. They feel it's their job. They take a different role in that. And the goal of running a company is to get people to engage and to feel that they're fulfilling what's meaningful to them. No one goes to work for the sake of a company. They go to work to fulfill what's most valuable to them. If they can't see how their job description is helping them fulfill that, they're disengaged. If a child can't see how the classes at school is helping them fulfill their highest values, they're disengaged. If a wife or husband does not see how the responsibilities that they have is helping them fulfill their highest values, they're disengaged. They're uninspired. Raise your hand if all this is making sense so far. Now we have the fun thing called a relationship. And now we're in a dialogue between two people. Our top three values is kind of like the 80% that gives us 80% results. The 20% that gives us 80% of results. If you don't fill your day with high priority actions that inspire you, your day is going to fill up with low priority distractions that don't. If you don't pursue challenges that inspire you, your day is going to fill up with challenges that don't. Just the same thing, if you don't take money and invest it into assets, it's going to be eroded by liabilities. Basic law of economics. So since that's where your identity is, that's what your purpose is, that's what your knowledge area is, and you want to be loved for that. How many of you want to be loved for what you do, what you know, and who you are? That's a pretty standard procedure. So now in a relationship, values play the most significant role. If you believe that you're superior to them and they're inferior to you, you're going to project your values onto them. So you're going to project downward onto them. And anytime you feel superior to somebody and you project your values onto them and expect them to live in your values, you're going to have futility. Everybody here who's been married knows what I'm talking about. Raise your hand if you've been in a marriage and you thought you could fix and tried to project your values onto somebody and found it futile, and eventually you started to learn to give up. It takes you 60 years to figure that out, but you just eventually don't realize it's not going to work. People don't want to be what you want to make them. They want to be who they are. And who they are is a reflection of their highest values. So if you don't know their highest values and you don't value their highest values, you can almost guarantee that you're going to want to fix them. And you're going to want to talk down to them, which is disrespectful. Anytime you talk down to somebody, you have what is called care less. You care less about them than you. So if this is you and this is them, then that's a care less. It means you have a superiority. You're negating them. You're projecting onto them, expecting them to live in your values. They can't. Every decision they make is based on what they have in their values. Every perception, every decision, and every action. And every decision they make is based on what they believe will give them the greatest advantage over disadvantage to their values at that moment. Anytime you expect them to live in your values, you're going to be betrayed. Betrayal is not what they did to you. Betrayal is what you did to you, expecting them to live in your values and not their own. Raise your hand if you grasp that. Betrayal is not what they did to you. It's what you did to you by expecting them to live in your values. Or read your mind and live according to what your values are because you're righteously projecting your values onto them. So that creates futility. And why? Because if you minimize them, that's inauthentic. If you exaggerate you, that's inauthentic. So when you exaggerate yourself with pride and resent them or belittle them, you're going to get resistance to humble you, to eventually realize you're going to weigh yourself down. And that is not a mistake. That is the nature of human beings, to make sure we get feedback on what does not work. Every symptom in our relationship is a feedback mechanism to guide us to what works. And that doesn't work. Being self-righteous and projecting values onto somebody doesn't work. Now, sometimes we're on the other side. We minimize ourselves and go into shame and exaggerate them and infatuate with them. Now what we do is we look up to them. And now we're walking around careful, walking on tippy toes. When we're careful, we walk on our toes. When we're careless, we walk on our heels. Our toes is our soul. When you're infatuated with somebody, you call them a soul mate. That's a soul of the foot. That's a joke. And when you're angry at them, it's a heel mate, because you're walking on and stomping on your heels and playing on a terrible metaphor. Now here you minimize yourself. Now everybody here has probably started out in a relationship somewhere back in your teens, 20s, 30s, whatever, where you were infatuated. Raise your hand if you've ever been infatuated with somebody. Sure. And you assumed you were conscious of the upsides and unconscious of the downsides of who they were, and you put them on a pedestal. And then you found yourself minimizing yourself, fearing the loss of them, afraid to say anything negative, and basically sacrificing what was priority to you to be with them. Raise your hand if you remember the first few weeks, you'd stopped doing what you normally did as a routine and started doing weird stuff to try to fit into their lives. Anytime you infatuate with somebody, you're going to inject their values and you're going to attempt to live in their values. That's also futile. It's non-sustainable attempting to live in somebody else's values. It's non-sustainable to try to get somebody to live in your values. Both of them create symptoms. You will eventually build up resentment, sacrificing yourself for them, and they will build up resentment, trying to get them to sacrifice for you. Both of them will create symptoms and as a feedback to let you know that what you're doing doesn't work. Because you're looking for a relationship that's a match. Now, a match is different than infatuation or resentment. A match is called caring. And caring is what keeps the rings on the finger. Caring means that the divine in me honors the divine in you. The state of unconditional love of my soul honors the state of unconditional love in you. That means that I see how your values serve me as much as I see my own values serve me. And I see my values serve you as much as your own values serve you. Now, caring is a sustainable, fair exchange. Every dynamic you have with your spouse or partner, you store any imbalanced exchanges. And a woman's memory of what she has sacrificed for her man is indelible for eternity and is more powerful than any Intel chips on any computer. You can guarantee a woman will remember everything she sacrificed for her man. Raise your hand, women, if you know what I'm talking about. No memory beats a woman's memory. I'm joking. I'm teasing you. Now, so the question is this. With that understanding, one of the great questions in life, I hope you write this, how specifically is what my partner is dedicated to helping me fulfill what I'm dedicated to? How specifically is what my partner is dedicated to helping me fulfill what I'm dedicated to? How specifically is my partner's top 3 values helping me fulfill my top 3 values? And you answer that as many times as you want to have intimacy. And I mean that. The more you answer that question, the more intimate your relationship will be. Then you ask in reverse, how specifically is my top 3 values helping my partner fulfill their top 3 values? Because if I can't find out how it is, I can't communicate in their values. Caring is selling. And the selling, if you go to a customer and think you know better than the customer, you're not going to do well in sales. If you're careless and not meeting their needs, they go elsewhere. If you're careful and sacrifice your profits, you're not going to make a profit. You have to find a sustainable, fair exchange. All symptoms in business, all symptoms in relationship, all symptoms in relationship are feedback mechanisms to guide you to authenticity and sustainable, fair exchange. I hope that's really written down. All symptoms in relationships are feedback mechanisms to guide you to sustainable, fair exchange and authenticity. Because when you're cocky and proud, looking down on them, you're inauthentic. When you're humble and shamed and looking up at them, you're inauthentic. You're proud, too proud or too humble to see what you see in them inside you. But when you're caring, you're realizing what I see in them, I see in me. And what they're dedicated to is just as valuable to me. They mean something to me. This brings meaning and fulfillment to relationship. I've had people who were ready to throw in the towel in the relationship. And they never took the time to find out what the values were, and they never found out how to link values. And ready to end the relationship. And I had them go and identify their values. There's a value determination process on my website for free. It's complimentary, it's private. I've been working on values 46 years of the 52 years I've been teaching. And there's a method there for you. It's worked and used all over the world in governments and companies and all kinds of people. But that process, if you're authentic in your answers and really honest and really look at what your life demonstrates is important to you, not your fantasies, but what your life demonstrates. If you take the time to link the values, now how do you do that? You find out the top value, mine is teaching. You find out their top value. Maybe that's mothering. How is my teaching helping her become a great mother and fulfill what she desires in mothering? And how is her dedication to mothering helping me in my teaching? If I can't see that, I'm going to fix them. If I can't see how I serve them, I'm going to look up to them. If I can't see how they serve me, I'm going to look down on them. If I can see how I serve them and they serve me, I'm going to be with them. People make decisions to be with people according to what brings the greatest advantage or disadvantage. If they don't see an advantage of being with you, they select somebody else. When you're selecting a mate, you're looking utilitarian. You're trying to find the best utilitarian outcome you can in your life. You're looking at them for their spiritual awareness. You're looking at them for their intellect. You're looking at them for their ambitions. You're looking at them for their resourcefulness and economic resources. You're looking up there for their physical appearance and attractiveness and fitness. You're looking for their social savvy, and you're looking for them. Do they really want to be with you? Do they care about you? And are they inspired by something? So you're looking for anything that will help you fulfill your values. Now, if you can't see what they're dedicated doing it, you're going to want to change them. And most relationships are built on fantasies. A fantasy that they're going to meet my fantasy, and you're having an affair with a fantasy figure, which is guaranteed to undermine the relationship. As long as we have fantasies and compare our mates to our fantasies, we won't give them a chance to be loved. They want to be loved for who they are, not the fantasy we try to make them. And we'll punish them if we're trying to create a fantasy. So we have to be mature enough to honor who they are and select wisely in a relationship by asking that. The couple that were having difficulties, they took the time to do the exercise. It took a couple hours. They put 80 connections between both of these, their top values 80 times until they were brought to tears and appreciated each other and saw how important the other person's role was in their life. Because they don't see it, they kill each other. I was doing a breakthrough experience, one of my signature programs in Ohio. And there was a gentleman there attending. And afterwards, he came up to me and says, my wife, I wish she would have been here. It would have been great for us to go through this together. And I said, well, maybe we can have her come to one in the future. And he says, well, I don't want to wait too long in the future. Do you do private work? And I said, yes. They said, well, I'd like to set up a meeting with you. So I flew from Ohio back to New York. I was living in Trump Tower at the time. And it was interesting because He sent his wife to New York on Tuesday, 2 days later, and put her up in the Plaza Hotel, which is a couple blocks from Trump Tower, and asked if I would spend the day with her. So I'm getting paid to spend the whole day in the hotel room with his wife. Now that's a pretty good job. How many would agree? Spend a whole day getting paid to go spend time with another man's wife. I like that. So the first thing I did, I went over there and I asked her, what is it that you think that your husband wanted you to come here for? Just out of curiosity. Is there some challenges that's going on in the relationship? Why would he want you to be here? And she said, well, we have a great relationship, but we do sometimes have communication issues. We sometimes have some fights, and I pick on him and he picks on me and this kind of thing. I said, well, let's find out what both of your values are. Well, hers were her children, her home, her family, and their children's education would be about number 4, which is not uncommon. There are many women that still have that. Today, it's a little less than that because there's more women working, but still, this is 20 years ago, so 23 years ago, actually. So back then, there was still a little bit more of that. His highest value was business, making money, and golfing. Probably number 5 was relationship on his. And probably number 6 or so, or 7 maybe, was business for her. She didn't really want to go to work since she's now got the kids. So I asked her, once I looked at those values, and I got to meet him and I got to know him, and I felt that those values matched for what he said. And then I said, how specifically is him dedicated to working, helping you with your children as a mother? She said, it's not. I said, well, I didn't ask that. I said, how is his highest value, what he's dedicated to, what is most important to him? How is it helping you fulfill what's most important to you, mothering? I can't see it. That's the problem we have. He works all the time and he doesn't even see his kids. I said, I know that. I'm aware of that. But I want to know, how is his working helping you as a mother? I don't know. I said, I didn't ask that. You need to be accountable to answer the question. Because if you can't see it, you're going to want to change and fix him, which is going to alienate him and push him away. Because you're having an affair with a fantasy who you're going to make him instead of who he is. So let's go find out what's the benefit of him doing that. And she went blank because she was angry because he didn't see the kids, and that's her highest value. So she wanted him to live in her values. I said, if he lived in your values and he didn't focus on work, would you have the beautiful home you have? She goes, no, we have a 6,000 square foot home and 4-bedroom home. One for the kids. No. I said, so is one of the benefits that he's working is you have a beautiful home to fix? She said, yes. Beautiful nest? Yep. Beautiful furniture? Yeah. Does that have anything to do with him working? Yep. I started to make her see what he's doing is actually helping her get what she wants. Because he didn't need a house. She wanted the house. That wasn't his thing. He could live in a simple apartment. So the point was, I started to make her aware of what he was doing was helping her fulfill what she wanted. How else is he doing it? Well, by him working, I get to control the kids. Because when he comes home, he plays and disrupts what I'm doing, and I have to put discipline on him again. He always wants to play with him. I said, can you see there's a part of you that wants him away so you can manage the kids the way you want? She goes, yes. I said, so what's the benefit of him working? And I kept asking her questions until we didn't stop until we had about 80 answers, until she had tears of gratitude for everything he was doing in the top 3 values, including golfing. She never took the time to see how what he was dedicated served her. But then I reversed it. How is you dedicating to raising these beautiful children, helping him in business? I have no idea. Well, if you have no idea, you can't sell them on what you're wanting to do. So how does it do it? And I helped her see that. I said, when you raise beautiful children and they're well-mannered, and he has a business meeting over and you cook for them and do a beautiful meal, with beautiful children there and they're dressed well and you got a beautiful home and you managed it well, does that help him close business? He goes, yes, it does. I said, so is what you're dedicated to serving his business? Yes, I never saw that, but yes. And your children, are they going to be the things that's going to be the assets that's growing in the future, may even take over the business? One of them may take over the business. Wouldn't that be interesting? I said, well, my son is interested already in the business. So that could be that he's going to do it. I'm building up an entrepreneur that's going to take over the business in the future to help transition the business. And I made her go and look at what she's dedicated to is serving his values. And I answered that about 80 times until she got a tear of gratitude for herself. Because if two people can't see how each other's missions, their purpose, their knowledge, and their identity, if they can't see how it's helping them fulfill their own values, they're going to want to fix the person. And nobody wants to be fixed. Put your hand up if you'd rather not be fixed and rather be loved for who you are. So by taking the time to make the links, you liberate yourself from a tremendous amount of frustration in relationships. You start working as a team. So one of the greatest questions you can ask in any relationship is, how is what they're dedicated to helping me fulfill what I'm dedicated to? And how is what I'm dedicated to helping fulfill what they're dedicated to? How is what's highest on their values and their mission, their purpose, and their identity helping me fulfill what I'm on a mission for, my highest value, what my identity is? And don't stop until you have tears of gratitude, until you want to put your arms around them and thank them for the contribution they make to your life. And don't stop until you have your arms around them and thank them for the contribution of life. Do not stop in answering that question. And the day you do, I guarantee you, your relationship dynamic just shifted. Now, there's another exercise you can do. Raise your hand if that was useful so far. Another exercise you can do is whatever you judge in other people. There's a beautiful quote in the New Testament, and it's called Romans 2:1. And Romans 2:1 basically says, in a nutshell, be aware of judging other people. For whatever you judge in others, you do the same things. It's been shown, I've been studying human behavior for 52 years, and I've been teaching all those years. And one thing I'm certain about, after going through all these years, is that you will never judge another person for anything other than a projection of your own judgment of yourself. So whatever you resent in others is something you feel ashamed about, and they're reminding it, and you're too proud to admit it. You're dissociated from it. You're too proud to admit what you see in them inside you, but you're actually ashamed, and you're wanting to resent them because they're reminding you of what you feel ashamed about. You're trying to fix them so you don't feel ashamed. And the same thing in reverse. When you admire somebody, you only admire things on the outside that represent parts of you on the inside that you own, that you have, but you're too humble to own. Anything you're too proud or too humble to admit you have that you see in others becomes a button that will run your life. They'll hook you with an infatuation or hook you with a resentment. But it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with what you're storing inside your subconscious mind. Every time you judge somebody with a subjective bias interpretation of reality, your valence, you add valence, your amygdala adds valency to your hippocampus and stores that as an episodic memory, and you end up having these emotional charges that are stored in the subconscious mind that causes you to emotionally react with seeking or avoiding people. And these are all the disowned parts. And every disowned part is unfulfilling. That's why whenever you judge somebody, look down or up at somebody instead of across at somebody with reflective awareness, these disowned parts leave you feeling empty and unfulfilled. You cannot feel fulfilled with judgment, but you can feel fulfilled with love.
Hey, thank you, Dr. John. That was very informative, and I'm sure that you got a lot out of that. I think it really hits the nail on the head. So moving on to our next question, you talk a lot about perceptions. Can you explain a little bit about, how our perceptions lead to our emotional states and then how that drives illness? Can you speak a bit about that?
Your body has specialized receptors for sight, sound, smell, taste, and tactile. You actually have hundreds of receptors you may not even be aware of. These receptors take stimuli from the environment, transduce them into electrical conduction signals, which are called action potentials. All of the sensory stimuli that you have, all the sensory stimuli passes through the receptor, goes into a neuron. The neuron goes into the spinal cord and up the spinal cord and in the brainstem and goes up to the thalamus, which is a relay station that then sends another nerve to what is called the cortex. When it hits the cortex, you become aware of the stimulus. On the way, it becomes interactive with other neurons, and these other neurons that interact with it, called association neurons or interneurons, take past experience that have been associated with similar stimuli and add it to the new receptor stimuli. And the combination of those transform reception into perception. So that means that what you see out there in the world is not the actual out there in the world, it's your interpretation from the experiences you've had. Let me give you an example. If you meet somebody, let's say it's a blonde girl or a blonde guy, let's say, and each time you meet a blonde guy, they're kind of irritable. You eventually get the association with the stimulus from the eyesight and sound that blonde guys are probably going to be irritable. And you now make an association from your previous experiences and your interpretation of this new person now. You're not actually interpreting them as they are. You're interpreting them as they are plus what you brought to the table. Raise your hand if you get that. So your interpretation of them is a perception. Now you add up those perceptions over a while, you start getting a concept. Men are this way. Now, if you balance that concept, you get an appercept, according to William James, which means you've been accountable to look at both sides of people and not put a label on them. But perception is literally a distortion of reality. It's a subjective interpretation of reality. The object out there and your subjective interpretation of that object is two different things. And 10 people will see the same object differently and have different associations. If every one of you walked into a mall, you'd be noticing and avoiding noticing different things in the mall according to your values. And your values are a byproduct of all of the judgments you've made in your life. Now, when you take that information, it goes into a perception. Anytime it's not a balanced perception, the thalamus relays information to the amygdala, which is a deep nuclei in the brain, not the cortex. This amygdala then assigns, is this a prey or a predator? Is this pleasure or pain? Is this something to seek or avoid? And it adds valency and makes the decision if it's attractive or repulsive, and the degree in which it is attractive or repulsive, graded. It then sends that information with a burst of you might say, ripples over into the hippocampus, which is our storage mechanism, which are little seahorse systems on either side, that basically store that as an episodic memory, where we then have this memory that this is good or bad, we seek or avoid it. Whenever we do that, if it's something we seek, it sends a signal to the hypothalamus, into the brainstem, to activate the vagus nerve or down into the spinal area to activate the sympathetic nervous system. So if it's something favorable and we've associated positive with it, pleasure with it, and we seek it like prey, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is a rest and digest portion. It is anabolic and builds the body. It causes mitosis and growth of cells. It reduces chemistry. It lowers heart rate, lowers blood sugar. It lowers fat levels. It relaxes you, puts you to sleep, and helps your immune system. And I could go on about 10,000 different things that system does in each cell of the body. If you perceive something in the opposite valency, the opposite charge, negative charge, you'll activate the sympathetic nervous system, and you'll get a fight or flight response and not a rest and digest response. You'll get catabolic, you'll get oxidative, you get acidic, you'll raise blood pressure, raise heart rate, raise lipids in the blood. You'll cause the heart rate to go up, and you'll get the exact opposite symptoms, and you'll actually kill cells with apoptosis. So the body has autonomic responses to perceptions that are imbalanced. Anytime we have an imbalanced ratio of perceptions, where there's more positive than negative or more negative than positive, and we judge, we create imbalances in the autonomic expression to the cells. Those autonomic nervous systems, the sympathetic, parasympathetic, release adrenaline and acetylcholine. Adrenaline and acetylcholine are neurotransmitters that activate the wall of the cells, causes a cascading of a series of other cell responses, what they call second messengers. That causes then changes in enzymes and epigenetics to cause the genes to express different proteins and print different proteins and alter cells and create symptomatology in the cells. Every cell, when you understand the cell and the epigenetics and the control of it, you can read the cell's actions and tell what psychology is driving it. There is no illness without a psychology. Anybody that tells you otherwise has not done their homework. You cannot have changes in perceptions without changes in ratios of transmitters and changes in physiology. Now, let me give you an example. If you have two basic forms of stress in life, you might want to write these two. There's only two. I'm going to draw a little diagram here. So here's your authentic self, AS. Here's your inauthentic self. Here's where you're proud. Here's where you're shamed. Here's when you infatuate with somebody. Here's you resent somebody. Now, when you infatuate with somebody, you tend to minimize yourself. When you exaggerate them, you minimize you. When you resent somebody, you tend to exaggerate you and minimize them. So anytime you judge them, you exaggerate or minimize them. And anytime you do, you minimize and exaggerate you by the law of contrast. Wilhelm Wundt, the father of experimental psychology in 1897, wrote a book called The Principles of Psychology and outlines the law of contrast. So you cannot exaggerate somebody without minimizing you. You cannot minimize somebody without exaggerating you. Raise your hand if you've ever been infatuated with somebody and sacrificed you for them, and then been resentful to them, and then tried to sacrifice them for you. If you take those to the extreme, you'll have suicide or homicide. If you sacrifice yourself for others to the extreme, you'll get to suicide. You'll die for them. If you resent them to extreme, you'll kill them. You'll die, kill them for you. Now, anytime you infatuate with them, you have what is called aphilia. Anytime you resent, aphilia is for prey, and phobia is for predator. So this is the predator, and this is the prey. Now, anytime you do this, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Anytime you do this, you activate the sympathetic nervous system. This is rest and digest. This is fight and flight. This is anabolic. At night, it builds. This is catabolic. During the day, it destroys. It does this by reduction. It does this by oxidation, chemically. This causes alkalinity. This causes acidity. The parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system are complementary opposites. Now, when something represents an infatuation, you have a fear of loss, a phobia of loss. And if something comes that you resent, you have a phobia of gain. So you're basically trying to escape that which is predator and seek that which is prey. There's only two forms of stress in life: the perception of loss of that which you seek, and the perception of gain of that which you're trying to avoid. There are only two stresses known. You can make a list of any stress you've ever had in your life, and it boils down to one of those two. I was meeting at the Harvard Club with Albert Crum, who worked with Hans Selye, who was on the selection committee for the Nobel Prize. And this gentleman and I had a conversation about this very topic many years ago. So you only have two forms of stress in life: the fear of starvation and the fear of being eaten. The fear of loss of prey, which is starvation, the fear of being eaten by a predator. Inside your amygdala, that's all you got. And that's why we have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic for eating and for running, escaping. By the way, all eating disorders fall into two categories. When you're under very stress, watch this carefully. Raise your hand if you've ever, when you've gotten very stressed, eat more than normal. You eat too much when you get stressed. And other people, how many of you have also had stress when you eat too little? You feel like you don't want to eat. You'll see the room puts their hands up under both. You get ghrelin. When you fear the loss of something you want, you get ghrelin stimulated and you overeat. When you fear the gain of something you don't want, you stimulate leptin and you undereat. Both of them are responses to either of these two types of perceptions. Every transmitter has a ratio of perceptions driving it in the body. Every hormone, the same thing. So over here, when you get parasympathetic, you lower your heart rate. You lower your blood sugar. You lower your blood pressure. Here, you raise your blood pressure. Here, you raise your blood sugar and increase your heart rate. This increases fats, lipids, and this decreases fats. So everything that we see by our signs that doctors reveal and symptoms that you feel, every one of those symptoms, if you understand what the symptom is and what cells are involved in it, you can trace it back to one of these two perceptions. The perception of loss of that which you seek, or the perception of gain of that which you try to avoid, and these are called stress, distress. Now, if we're neutral and we're loving somebody and we're not infatuated or resentful, we don't have the fear of loss and we don't have the fear of gain. And we don't create symptoms. That's why love is still the greatest healer known on earth, which is why people, when they get cancer, they bring back and get with their family and teach each other how to love each other on the last days. The purpose of illness is to give people feedback, to let them know when they're judging, to help them guide them back to sustainable, fair exchange, authenticity, and love. Misinterpreted by pharmaceutical, allopathic, palliative treatment models for commercial purposes instead of curative purposes. Raise your hand if you got what I just said there. So there is no symptom that doesn't have a psychology. I've been tracing these down to the quantum level for 46 years. I'm working on a book right now, Balance the Mind, Heal the Body, in fact, even though I've written many books on that topic. You may have read Louise Hay book, That information came from me, in case you didn't know that. She didn't want you to know that, though. So the reality is that you cannot have a perception without your physiology letting you know. And the second, now here's what's interesting. When you get a parasympathetic, this is basically nighttime, rest and digest. That's why when you meet somebody and you want to take them out to dinner so they can digest something, then you want to take them to bed so you can rest something. Raise your hand if you've ever wanted to go out and have a parasympathetic evening with some hot babe or hot dude. Okay. What that means is I'd like to come home and I'd like to take you to eat, fatten you up a bit, then come back and eat you back at home, right? When I'm sleeping. You're a predator eating some prey. I'm joking a bit. But that's mainly at night. During the day, you get the challenges of the day. So the sympathetic deals with red blood cells, and the parasympathetic white blood cells. That's why the red blood cells are biconcave discs and have no nuclei, because the sun damage during the day can cause damage to the nuclei. That's why the red blood cells that are active during the day. In fact, hemopoiesis is basically developed by sympathetic sides in the bone marrow. And what happens is our blood cells, white blood cells, are at night. They got large nuclei. They don't get damaged by radiation. So our body has a circadian system for it. It has a suprachiasmatic nucleus in the front of the brain, creating a chronobiology, a balanced autonomics to try to keep you well, to try to create what is the wisdom of the body, as Walter Cannon said in his book, The Wisdom of the Body in 1932, to try to keep us homeostatic. Now, what's interesting is, if we love, we bring the balanced autonomics. And we found out that when we're under parasympathetic, we get more delta waves. When we get sympathetic, we get more beta waves. When we bring them together, we get alpha theta waves. The alpha theta junction is 8 cycles per second. The beta is 13 cycles per second. The delta is 3 cycles per second. Halfway between 3 and 13 is about 8 cycles per second. 8 cycles per second release gamma synchronicities in the brain. And gamma synchronicities are moments of aha and eureka moments where we get tears of inspiration that we feel as a guide in our life. Raise your hand if you've had a moment in your life where you read something, saw something, or heard something, and you got tears in your eyes, and you knew that that was a special moment of authenticity, and you knew to follow that. We innately know that gamma synchronicities are moments of authenticity where we have sustainable fair exchange and where we're loving. Pay close attention to that. That is the greatest healer known. No medication can compete with that. No medication can compete with that. Medication is an approximation to try to balance out chemistry that your mind knows how to do if you just bring yourself back to authenticity.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go on to another topic, and let's talk about money, because I think money is a topic that, you know, some people find difficult. So can you talk a little bit about how, you know, we can create more wealth? How can we change our perceptions around money?
Thousands and thousands of years ago, when we were in this supposedly nomadic stage, even though human beings are much older than we realize, civilizations are much longer than we thought. But thousands of years ago, when we were nomadic and we had little families, clusters, and then kinship, and eventually township, and then communities, and eventually cities, and then states, and then nation, and family world, and now solar interplanetary development. When we lived by ourselves, we were generalists, and we did everything by ourselves, isolated. Just like you find sometimes people live out there in the rural areas and they try to make it all in their own nature, in nature. How many of them met at least a few that really live out there in nature by themselves, and they're generalists? They do everything around the house. There's no specialty per se. This is the least efficient socially. But as we came along and we started to work into townships, kinships and townships, we started noticing that somebody was pretty good at weaving a basket. Somebody else was good at, you know, growing things. Another person was good at, dealing with animals, and some was good at building a house. And some people were good at knitting things, and specialties started to occur. And as specialties occurred, some people were good at planting and growing tomatoes. Some people were good at metallurgy and making, horse feet or whatever, horseshoes. And so as a result of it, somebody would come up to you and said, look, I'm making tomatoes and I need a house built. Can you build me a house? I'll give you 1,000 bushels of tomato. And the guy says, well, I can't, what am I going to do with 1,000 bushels of tomato? That's not going to work for me. If I build you the house, I can't use that many tomatoes. I can't eat them all. They'll go bad. So they said, well, that doesn't work. So the only solution for all the differentiations of specialties was to create a common denominator, a common unit that everybody could go to the market with and sell their goods and find a common unit. So money was designed for the purpose of sustainable fair exchange, because there's no way you can have fair exchange if you do knitting and somebody builds a house, you can't knit enough clothes to pay for the house. They don't need that many clothes. So what happens is you go to the market, you sell your clothes, you make enough money, and then you convert it into a unit that allows them to have fair exchange. And each person puts a value based on needs, supply and demand. Adrian, if you grasp what I'm saying here. So this is the foundation of money. So please write this. The purpose of money, one of the purposes of money was to increase the probability of sustainable fair exchange. And everything that goes on in our life is trying to help us master that. All of the symptoms in our business, all the symptoms in our family relationship, and our symptoms with money are trying to get us to have fair exchange. If you try to get something for nothing, narcissistically, people will alienate you until you're humbled. Pride before the fall. If you try to give something for nothing altruistically, you'll eventually be out of business because you have no profits. And then you'll need other people to rescue you. So people will lift you up to support you. So nature is taking people who are proud and humbling them, and people that are ashamed and lifting them until they finally get back into caringness and have sustainable fair exchange, like I told you. They're trying to teach each other how to exchange value for value. A non-zero sum game. A zero-sum game is I win, you lose, or you win, I lose. But a non-zero sum game is we both win. So money was designed to help us have authenticity, equanimity, equity, and sustainable fair exchange, and to teach us how to care about human beings, which allows us all to maximize our potential. Now, nothing happens without money. I mean, you can maybe get by on bartering, but bartering is the lowest form of exchange. I have people come up to me sometimes and say, well, I was in Hawaii. There's a lot of bartering that goes on in Hawaii. I was in Hawaii, and this lady comes up to me and said, I'd like to come to your seminar. The seminar was like $1,200. And she says, and I have a special gift. I said, what's that? She says, I know how to go and stick my head down in the water in the ocean and talk to the porpoises and the whales. And I can tell all the porpoises to the Pacific Ocean about you, Dr. Demartini. Can I come to your seminar? I said, well, I've already hired somebody to talk to the porpoises. That's already covered. I don't need that right now. Thank you. So that doesn't seem like a fair exchange. I suggest that you go and see if you can't sell that service to people, get some money, and then come back. Raise your hand if you got what I'm saying. Because I need a common unit that's usable, because I can't use that. Doesn't serve it. So you're getting what you want, but I'm not getting what I want. So it's a non-sustainable, it's not fair exchange. How many got that? Wealth is nothing more than sustainable fair exchange and caring about humanity to find the greatest number of people to serve. I spoke at a church one time. I said, if you're poor, it's because you don't care about human beings. If you cared about human beings, you would find out what their needs are, and you find a way of meeting those needs directly or indirectly with some product, service, or idea to help your fellow human being. If you do, and you do it in a way that really meets their needs, they'll do some sort of fair exchange with you in order to compensate you for that, because they will value that. Until you value you, don't expect anybody else to. And the way you value you is by doing something that's meaningful to you in a way that's also meaningful to others. So money is simply a means to teach people how to be authentic, how to love, how to have fair exchange that's sustainable, and to teach you how to value yourself and value other people equally. That's it. That's its purpose in the overall scheme. And anybody that tells you it's not spiritual but doesn't understand the obviousness. Because when you're exaggerating yourself with pride and narcissistic and trying to get something for nothing, that's non-sustainable. When you minimize yourself and trying to sacrifice yourself for something, raise your hand if you've sacrificed and given something to other people and found out it backfired. You rescued somebody, and then you said goodbye to your money, and then you lost your friend. Because it's not designed that way. If you give them a fish for a day, you feed them for a day, but you don't feed them for a life. But teach them how to fish, they'll feed them for a life. So you want to maintain sustainable fair exchange. Otherwise, a fool parts with their money. So really, spirituality is authenticity. And it doesn't require a temple or a mosque. Those are nice. Those are beautiful places. They're great, inspiring settings. But spirituality is purely a state of grace when you have sustainable fair exchange and you're doing a service that you feel is making a difference and people are saying thank you and you're having sustainable fair exchange and a gamma synchronicity. That's spirituality at its finest. So don't be hoodwinkled and subordinate to theological, institutional, moral hypocrisy systems and think that's spiritual, because it can distract you and derail you from real authenticity and real spiritual expression. Now, the question is, if you have somebody you want to have exchange with, you need to care about them to know what their values are, and you need to care about yourself enough to find out what you'd love to provide and find your niche. When you find your niche of what you want to provide to the people that would love to get what you want to provide, you found your niche. I love teaching. I love researching human behavior. I love sharing it. If I find somebody that's interested in it enough where they value it, I can get paid beautifully for that. If I don't, well, I don't. But my job is to provide something of value where people go, I want more of that. If there's no demand, you can't give a supply. So you have to create a demand. You have to find out what the world cares and wants. So money is a byproduct of caring about human needs. The more you care about human needs and more you meet those needs, the more wealthy you become. I learned from the Book of Wealth by Hubert Hal Bancroft many years ago that if you basically, it's about building a business that serves ever greater numbers of people. And the people that actually care enough about humanity to find something that everybody needs, universal need. A universal need is something that everybody can benefit regardless of culture or age. You know, when you stop and think about it, most of you probably brush your teeth. So whoever made toothbrushes and toothpaste is probably a billionaire. Most of you have a computer. Whoever designed computers, billionaire. So if there's nobody stopping us from finding something to pay close attention to what the world actually needs and then meeting those needs. If you find something that everybody needs, there's a gentleman that lives on my ship. He sold one of his companies for $1.5 billion. He's got 4 companies. And he basically paid close attention to what people were looking up on algorithms on the internet. He found the most common things. And then he found out exactly what they were looking for and really narrowed it down what it was, and then found the most efficient solution to what they were looking for and packaged that and created an algorithm for helping people identify that. And in a matter of 3 years, he went from 0 to $1.5 billion because he met the needs. A massive amount of people wanted that unique information that he had. So if we care enough about human beings to really find out what they need, not just lip service it, but really find out what they need, where there's a demand for our supply, we won't be able to keep up with the supply. We'll provide for those needs. But if not, that means we're thinking about ourselves, projecting onto others, and assuming that they need to do what we think is important, which automatically undermines wealth. Now, whatever you earn on that wealth, whatever you earn, a portion of that needs to be invested. Because if all you do is have a immediate gratification and you earn money and then you spend it and you buy things that go down in value, it's because you devalue money. People that have a high value on money buy things that go up in value. People that have a low value on money buy things that go down in value. So if you don't put your money into assets, it goes into liabilities. An asset is either property or owning companies or something that goes up in value and earns compound interest and capital gains. If not, it's capital loss. And so if you value yourself and value serving people, you'll have a source of income. If you value money, you'll take the money and defer gratification. If you work and you work for somebody else, you pay the most taxes. If you own your own company, you pay the middle amount of taxes. If you invest and put it into assets, you pay the least amount of taxes. The government rewards people that can take care of themselves, because if it doesn't, they have to tax them to be able to help them when they get into Social Securities. So we automatically have our society rewarding people that manage money wisely. They pay the least taxes, and they end up having the most service to people, and they value themselves. If you don't value yourself, you'll keep buying things to make you think you're valuable. If you value yourself, you'll have money working for you. You're either a slave to money or a master to money. If you're a master to money, you're buying assets and it's working for you with compound interest. If you're a slave to money, you're buying liabilities and getting in debt and paying the bank's interest. One's going backwards, one's going forward. So people that live and take their money and invest it, they have compound interest, it accelerates, and then it works for them, and then they work because they love to, not because they have to. The people that don't defer gratification and they want immediate gratification, they let their amygdala run their life, they impulse buy, they let the outside world dictate what they got to have by comparison to the Joneses and impulse sales. And then they spend money to fill up a house that they can barely afford for filling it up with crap. And then they wonder why they can't get ahead. So if you want to ask yourself a simple question, is whatever I'm buying going up in value or down? And do I value myself and my service, or do I not? And if I do, then I want to make sure that I take a portion of what I do and I buy assets that goes up, so it's working for me. I am a master of money, not a slave to money. If it's working for me, I'm its master. If I'm working for it, I'm its slave.
So there's people in the room who will kind of struggle with the principle of getting money working for you, because they'll say, well, look, I'm kind of, I'm living in survival mode. So I've enough coming in, I can go on a holiday, I would love to follow this principle. Now, that brings up an experience that Antonella and I had just a few years ago with a friend. And the friend came to us and said, I'm buying a property. The loan is approved. Everything is set and done. I've signed the contract. It's closing. But I'm short some money for the deposit. Can you loan me the money for the deposit? And this particular friend is very important and close to Antonella and I. And we're always setting about to spend time encouraging him, creating him, helping him evolve through his stuff and whatever. You know him. We met. And Antonella, being a master of your work and teaching, when I posed the question to her, she didn't have to use words to answer me. She just looked at me and I knew the answer. So I went back and I said, if I give you that money, I am decreasing your creativity. I'm stealing your resilience. I'm sacrificing your independence. What do you have to do to get that money? And go find a way and knock on 1,000 doors and do it today before you go to sleep tonight and get that money, and don't come to me for that. It's out there waiting for you if you just become more resilient. And he went back to the real estate agent, and the real estate agent reduced his percentage fee by the small amount that he needed to get the loan over the line. So the real estate agent ended up paying the fee because he became creative and resilient. Now, there's people in the room here, and I would think there's people here who have their family leaning on them. I need money. I need money for this and that. So it's easy for all of us to sit here and kind of articulate that this week should, but what principles could you teach them to start that process of getting money working for them if they're just living above survival? What habits can they put in place? And how do they deal with people who say to them, can I borrow from you?
If you feed them for a day and don't teach them how to fish, the next day they're going to come back for more because they're not having accountability. The Rockefellers outlined in their philanthropic studies, never rob people of dignity, accountability, responsibility, and productivity. You might want to write those for them. Never rob people of dignity, accountability, responsibility, and productivity. Dignity, accountability, responsibility, and productivity. You will destroy them and they will resent you.
Oh, sorry, Dr. John, can you write that down on the whiteboard so people can
Yep.
write?
Dignity, accountability, responsibility, and productivity. Now, you have capitalists and socialists out there. Capitalists produce, the socialists like to consume. There's always going to be a bit of that. And that's primarily because of the hierarchy of values. People that have a high value on intellect, business, and finance usually produce. People that have a high value on family, social, and health and fitness, they usually are consumers historically. I've traveled and spoken in 160 countries, and I've seen it. The impoverished countries, when I go there and I do the value determination on the people there, they definitely have more consuming focus than producing focus. And the technologically advanced countries are the opposite. So one's a right brain, one's a left brain. Right brain tends to go down. They're usually the poor starving artists, and the other ones are the technologists that go for them. So you're always going to have a little bit of that gradation. And you need it because somebody's got to produce kids and somebody's got to produce income. One's reproduction, one's production. But if it goes to one extreme or the other, nature brings in the other side. So I've had thousands of people get entitled and think, well, you have money, take care of this. And I've had to be the badass to tell them, thank you, but no thank you. I do not want to destroy my relationship with you. I do not want to have disrespect for you. I don't want to rob you of accountability, respect, productivity, etc., and dignity. And they hate you at first, and then they go out if they find somebody to rescue them, they become dependent. And then they end up teaching those people the lesson. So don't rescue desperation. Invest in inspiration if you want to grow your wealth. If you want to be taken care of or take care of people and then stay broke and then have to depend on government and other people to take care of you, then you basically became a poor steward of money and you became dependent. So you feed dependent, you become dependent. Even philanthropy. If I write for Jet Set magazine, and in there I wrote a really nice article on philanthropy. If you want to look it up, go digging for it. And philanthropy is not what many people think. Philanthropy means the love of human beings. It's not rescuing and giving something for nothing and robbing them of accountability. It's actually finding a way of making sure that they produce. I have a friend that lives on the ship with me. He's worth about $6 billion. And he basically, he's given away about $1 billion a year on an average. He gives away. And he opens up universities. He opens up performing arts centers. He's constantly doing it. And what he does is he seeds capital, various educational institutions, and gives opportunities with scholarships to help people who do excel in their education and contribute to society and they have to pay it back. They have to pay it back to be accountable. And he builds it, and he measures the productivity that he's generating. If you don't generate productivity with money, you squander it. So don't rescue people, and don't rescue desperation. They'll always plead for some more next time, and then they'll eventually resent you. The first time you give it, you kind of feel, okay, I'm being generous. But when they keep asking for it, asking for it, asking for it, they eventually resent you, and then you finally resent them. Raise your hand if you've been caught in that cycle before. It doesn't work. So help them by teaching them and helping them find a way of standing on their own 2 feet. That means you care. That's caring. Because then they'll respect themselves, they'll appreciate you, and you're not going to take your hard-earned money and squander it and wipe it out. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but every dollar that you have, if you took all the dollars you've ever earned in your life, added it up, and looked at what you have as a net worth today, and looked at the percentage, 1% to 10% to 20%, whatever it is, of all the money you've ever earned, that tells you how much you value yourself and value money. Think about it. I met a girl that was sitting at a dinner table with me in Houston, Texas, a Moroccan girl, beautiful girl. She had a black outfit on. She was trying to do a little seduction, but I wasn't interested. So when I got a woman that's got a black outfit on, that's got her boobs hanging out on over me, it's got perfume and everything else, I figured the best thing to do is talk about finance and economics at the dinner table. That usually calms it down. So I said, I see you got a Chanel purse there. She says, I do. I said, how much does that cost? She says, about $5,000+. I said, how much money have you earned in your entire life? And she goes, I never thought about that. Well, let's add it up. You've been working 22 years. You're 42 years old. How much money have you earned in your entire life? She calculated it, and it came out to be about $1.32 million out of all the money she's earned. 40,000, 50,000, 60, added it all up. I said, now, out of that, how much money do you have right now as an asset? And we had to explain what an asset was. She says, we found out she had $800, that's it, to her name. That's all she had saved, and that was an asset. Everything else was just stuff that was going down in value. I said, you saved 800 out of $1.23 million. What percentage is that? X. Now, if you buy a purse at $5,000, 800 compared to 1.23 million, that's 6 times the amount. 6 times $1.23 million is $7.5 million. That means you've got to earn $7.5 million to be able to clear and pay for something without being in debt with a credit card or debt. I said, so what you're paying when you buy that purse, you're paying $7.5 million worth of work. And then if you took that $5,000 and invested it, and it doubled every 7 years, which is doable, and you're 42, 49, and 7 is 50, 56, and 63. You could have 5 doublings in your life. So that's 5,000, 10, 20, 40, 80,000, maybe $160,000. So you got 7.5 plus $160,000 is the cost of that purse. That's the true cost of the purse. Is that really the priority of your life? And she looked at that and kind of stopped and think, says, I never thought that way. I said, that's what it's costing to have that purse. You're deferring gratification if you invest. You're doing immediate gratification and putting yourself in debt and working hard for it to have something because you value a purse. For prestige, because you think you're going to get a guy at a table like me that's got money. I said that you're a depreciating asset with that. Your cost if you don't know how to build up assets. So I basically smacked her sexual drive went down, which is my objective to keep me from getting in trouble. I didn't want to have babies at night. So in the process of doing that, she left there. She gave me a hug, which I was okay with. And the next day she went out and started an investment program because I told her what to do. She went to a Schwab discount broker, saved some money, and started to decide that she's going to put $300 a month away into an investment account. Now, this was 4.5 years ago, almost 5, 4.5. December will be 5. Add it up. She saved now a few $1,000s in the process. And once you start to save and invest, you tend to want to see it like a child. You tend to want to increase it, tend to want to grow it. It's not how much you do, it's the habit of doing it. Once you develop a habit of it, you tend to want to increase it. And it starts working for you. And compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. When you start doing that, every time you invest money, you're lowering your taxes. If I can make $5 million or $10 million a year off interest rate without having, and I get to defer taxes and get to grow it, I lower my tax bracket. And it's not because I'm doing anything unethical. I'm doing something perfectly ethical and legal. I'm just deferring gratification. So every time you put money into an asset that accumulates and allows it to grow compound interest, you get deferred gratification, you get deferred taxation, and you don't have to pay taxes while it's growing. And then when you do, you get a long-term capital gains, which is a lower tax rate. So your overall work, you're getting more bang for the buck. But if you keep buying stuff, you keep paying the most amount of taxes and make it harder and harder on yourself. That's why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, because the poor don't understand how money works. And the rich finally figured it out. And if you condemn the rich for managing it, you're foolish, because it's wise to go learn from the rich and take the money from the rich and redistribute the wealth. If the people who don't have a value of money start to have a value of money, the money equilibrates, and instead of the rich and the poor being extremes, it moderates. That's why I do what I can to teach people how to build their wealth, because it redistributes wealth into more fair exchange throughout a society. And it gets a middle class, which stabilizes societies. So the people that are rich will get richer, and the people who get poorer. But if the poor people learn how to be rich, it will redistribute the wealth and have a more middle class society. So my job is to teach people who have not learned how to manage money so they redistribute it from the rich to themselves. That's simple. That way they can get the tax advantages and all the advantages that people who are intelligent and understand money have had for all these centuries. But watch out for rescuing desperation. All it does is you only rescue people on the outside that represents a part of you feel ashamed of on the inside. Please write that. You only rescue people on the outside that represent a part of you feel ashamed of on the inside. They remind you of your own past wounds. When you brought yourself into accountability and love, you don't rescue people, you inspire people. You teach them how to master their life. You teach them how to become self-sufficient. Every one of you who have had children know you have an innate yearning to want to make sure that they are self-sufficient individuals, not dependent. Put your hand up if that's true. Automatically. And you don't want the burden. And if they try to be, and you give them if you give them a rob them of accountability, they'll resent you and you will resent them, and you'll destroy your relationship with them. And there's lots of people. I have people regularly. I have people that automatically find out who I am and they go, oh, you have money. I've got a problem. You should take care of me. And then they try to use emotional blackmail to try to get it from you. I laugh. I make a list of all the emotional blackmail techniques people try to use that don't have power, that they use in order to manipulate people with. And I just write them all out. And I said, that's number 6, number 5, and number 11. And I send it to them. I said, it doesn't work with me. I've been doing this too long to buy into your disempowered strategies to try to get something for nothing. I won't rob you of your own accountability. Thank you.
Just repeat that statement, Dr. John, that you just said just then.
Oh, you only rescue people on the outside that represent a part of you on the inside that you haven't loved, that you feel ashamed of. And you resent them. People that really intend to pay you off will go to a bank and pay the interest and be accountable. My dad, I wanted to borrow money to expand my office many years ago. And the economics were not the greatest in the city at the time. And the bank said, well, you'll need a co-signer or something. I said, well, I'll go to my dad. My dad charged me on top of the other interest, which was 7%, another 4%. And so I didn't like that. I was paying 11 friggin' percent, like almost a credit card. And so what I did is I paid that thing off within a year. It was a 5-year note, but I paid it off in a year because I didn't like that. Didn't like having to pay so much. I've never borrowed money since, except when I started buying real estate. When I bought real estate, condominiums and stuff like that, I did some then, but I got banks to make me money. Never borrow money for anything other than what produces more than the cost of the borrowing, or you're fool with money. That's why buying a house is not an investment. Buying a house is a lifestyle that raises your costs, which reduces your probability of financial independence. You want to buy stuff that goes up in value, not things that stagnate. I learned a long time ago that if you're going to buy something with bank money, always buy something that goes up in value, never something that's stagnant or goes down in value, or you're a fool parting with your money again. Banks love to make you in debt. Banks are what created the suburbs, in case you didn't know that. Banks wanted to be able to do, they sold the American dream around the world. They got you to live out in the suburbs, so you had to buy a car. So now you got a car loan. And then go get a house. You have a house loan. It's called a mortgage, which means pledge unto death. Then you end up having to get a credit card, and they give it a privilege. And guess what a credit card does? It separates the pleasure of buying from the pain of paying. And anytime you separate pleasure from pain, you become unaccountable, and your amygdala comes online, and you become addicted to spending. And they know that. They did the research on it. So they can sell you on it. It's a privilege to get in debt. You get to raise your debts. You get further, so they make the most amount of money off you. Then they do fractional reserve banking where you loan a little bit of money, they loan 10 times out. So people basically, they don't realize that they're creating indentured slaves unless you use the bank smart. You use the bank to borrow money to go and get renters to pay for you. If you do, then the capital gains and the renters pay for things, and you use the bank's money for your adventure. People who do that make money off the bank. Other people get debt. And most people have compound interest working against them instead of compound interest working for them. Remember, anything that's pleasure occupies your mind, and anything that's pain occupies your mind. Learning how to bring those. I grew up, we didn't have a credit card yet. They didn't have credit cards when I was a kid. They had layaway plans. You paid money monthly, and then eventually when it's all paid off, you finally got what it is. It was called deferred gratification. We've lost deferred gratification in our world today. It's all immediate gratification. And that's created massive amounts of debts in countries around the world out of foolishness, thinking they can just print money and then tax people with inflation. Be smart enough to reduce the erosion that taxes are giving you and philanthropic, and you can contribute to people in a way that actually makes them grow. Instead of letting a government rescue you with dole. In Australia, they have the dole and these kind of things that keep people dependent.
So, Dr. John, so if people like are earning money and they're saving the money to build wealth, and they're not using their hard-earned money to purchase depreciating assets, they're putting it into appreciating assets, how then would, so they're purchasing appreciating assets. How do they go about then, at what point would they buy a car that they like for their lifestyle, or that bag that's $4,000? At what point, are they putting all their money into their savings, or is there a percentage?
Well, the saving, okay,
lifestyle.
The purpose of saving is to build a reserve, and that's it. Once you have a saving reserve, it all goes to asset accumulation. You don't want to save only, because if you save only, you'll never beat out inflation and you'll never have your money working for you. You save for a reserve account, 3 to 6 months of liquid capital to make sure that no emergency can rock you. And then you put it into assets. And then you let the assets grow until the interest off the assets can buy you all the things you want. That way you have a crescendo life as you get older. If you just keep raising your lifestyle, you'll have a decrescendo life because you'll end up eventually not able to work and you'll have too many bills and you won't be able to afford things. So you'll have to decline as you get older. And then you'll burden your kids having to rescue you. Then they'll want you to die early. That's not the answer. You'll burden your kids. You'd be surprised how many parents are burdening their kids and making the kids have to take care of them when they get older. It's not fair to the kids. Then if you're going to do that with your kids, you need to make a negotiation on the day they're born and have them. You have to disclose what your intention is, that you're going to be having them take care of you when you're older, and they need to decide whether they want to stay in that family. They may want to go and jump into some other womb and come back out. But the reality is, what I did, here's how I did it. Please write this. I started saving money 42 years ago. Once I saved up a cushion, I started investing. And I started investing, and I have the same account that I've been putting money into every single week since that time. And I put so much away every single week towards that investment, and it compounds. And what happens is compounding then has compounding on top of compounding. That's what the beauty of compound interest is. And then what happens is the math starts compounding and it becomes amazing if you look at a compound interest chart. At first, it seems slow, but after a while, it's a logarithmic growth. It's an E-log growth. So it gets pretty profound. I'm now going into the 5 decades. If I showed you a chart on compound interest, 5 decades into compounding starts making amazing amount of money. So at first, I just saved and I invested, and I invested and invested. And I never raised my lifestyle unless I raised my savings and taxes equal amounts. That was my law. I didn't raise my lifestyle unless I raised my savings and taxes equal amounts. If I can raise my savings and taxes equal amounts, I've earned the lifestyle. But if I go beyond that in lifestyle, I'm going backwards and I'm basically staying a slave to money. So I didn't raise my lifestyle. I kept raising more assets. Every opportunity I get, I take to build assets. Anytime somebody took me out to dinner and I thought I was going to pay and they turned around to pay, I found out what the dinner was and I stuck it into savings. And if I thought I could pay it, I can certainly save it. Whenever I go to dinner or lunch to people, I tried to make sure I listened to them and tried to offer them a value, and then they always wanted to pay. I took the difference and I've saved it because they gave me a lunch. I just kept saving and investing my money. Well, after a while, it starts making me so much money. I work because I love to, not because I have to. If I stopped working right now, I'd still be making millions a year. But that's because I deferred the gratification and I get to have a crescendo lifestyle. I will not spend all that money and I can be philanthropic. But if I keep raising my lifestyle and I never have any money working for me, I guarantee you in the future, when you can't work, you're going to be lowering that lifestyle, simplifying it, downgrading, etc. Because you let deferred gratification go past you and you let immediate gratification run your life. So you take a portion of it. Now, what's interesting, when you manage money wisely, you get more money to manage. When you manage more money wisely, you get more money to manage. So what happens is when you start to manage money wisely, people know to buy from you. I mean, I would agree that if you had a person a choice to have somebody who's impoverished for somebody who's very famous and wealthy, if you had an opportunity to go to lunch with them, you'd probably be more likely to want to go and hang out with a person that's done accomplished things. I mean, I would agree. You'd probably want to do that. That'd probably be more likely. As a result of it, when you actually save and invest money, you get more opportunities, more associations, more ideas, and more likely people want to be around you. So the rich get richer because of that. So the more you do that, the less difficult your life becomes. Now, I'm not making money more important than relationships or any other area. I'm here about teaching people how to empower all areas. I don't care what area it is. I've got information for it to teach it. But that's a crucial one because the more wealth that you accumulate, the higher the health care that you'll be able to take care of, the higher likely to be able to build businesses, higher education. You just get more advantage in life. So you defer the gratification, you put your money into it, you let it start compounding and work for you. You only raise your lifestyle if you raise your savings and taxes equal amounts. And then after a while, the taxes get less, the investments get more, and the lifestyle can gradually, incrementally go up until a point where you're making more money than you even care about your lifestyle. I make more money than I ever will spend on my lifestyle. And I have a simple lifestyle. Warren Buffett's a simple guy. He doesn't need a big lifestyle. Drove the same old car, ate the same simple stuff, kept it simple. That's why he's wealthy. Most people try to keep up with the Joneses and compare themselves to others instead of compare their own daily actions to their own highest values and master their lives.
Right, thank you for that. Right, James.
Dr. John, could we just go back a little bit for a moment? You talked about intrinsic and extrinsic values. Thanks to research, we know that there's a connection between mental health, mental disorder. We know there's no genes for mental health. It's kind of a man-made phenomenon due to stress and the world that we found ourselves in, and all the things that you spoke about there. How, banks, the culture, the hierarchy, the people that rule the world have put us in this very, very stressful environment, causing mental health issues and so on. There's a connection between mental health and physiological health, health of our body, how we are biologically, the quality of our biological body.
Yep.
Can you make a connection between intrinsic values, extrinsic values, mental health, sickness, disease, just how it makes us feel bad, and then the body then being the barometer of, what's going on in the mind is a reflection of that. Can you talk about that?
Well, as you go up the hierarchy of values, they become more intrinsic values. The highest, most intrinsic value is the highest value. And this, if you go to Hartman's work on values, you'll see he references this. He calls it a non-derivative intrinsic value. It's not derived from anything outside you. It's intrinsic value because you spontaneously are inspired from within to act upon it. And your identity revolves around it. It's not based on some external thing. It's based on your own being. That's why it's basically the essence of your being ontologically. The extrinsic values are things outside you that distract you. So anything that's an extrinsic value is things you infatuate with or resent, and the outer world runs you. Everybody here has had a moment when you've been so resentful you couldn't sleep at night, or so infatuated you couldn't sleep at night. And the result of that is because of the extrinsic stimulus on the outside is running you. Your misinterpretation of what's happening outside you runs your life. So extrinsic values are the things that most people live. Most people want to go buy things and fill up their house with extrinsic value things instead of intrinsic meaningful things. I love what this gentleman that was a billionaire was being interviewed probably about 4 months ago. And he said, anything you buy in a mall is probably going to be transiently and meaningless in your life 10 years from now. Basically. It was really a very interesting, eye-opening idea. And you stop and look at what's really meaningful in your life. Some of you may or may not like Bill Gates, but one thing he did say that I thought was pretty brilliant is he said, on a daily basis, and I hope you write this in some context, what is the highest priority action? What is the highest priority action I can do today? What is the highest priority action I can do today to serve the greatest number of people, in the most efficient and effective manner, so I have a competitive advantage, with the resources that I am aware of in my possession today. What is the highest priority action I can do today to serve the greatest number of people, ever greater numbers of people, in the most efficient and effective manner, with the resources that I'm aware of today? Great question to ask yourself every day. That's the question he starts his day with. How can I be of the greatest service? Now, there's different opinions of what's great service in the world, and I may not agree with somebody, but they're the ones with their money, and they have the right to do what they want with their money. Let me understand. And if I had that attitude, I'd be caring about people and meeting their needs and becoming wealthy, and then I get to decide how that wealth is distributed. If you don't grow wealth, the government decides what's going to happen. And I don't know about you, but I can't guarantee you that the people running the government are going to make the wisest decisions with the money that you work hard for. I mean, would you agree with that? They're not necessarily guaranteed. Not all people are wealth conscious and humanitarian conscious that get into politics, as you can see in our American things. So it's something to think about. How do you want, at the end of your life, you're going to be asked a simple question. Did I do everything I could with everything I was given? And you want to be able to say, absolutely. And am I doing something that's leaving more than when I started? Did I contribute in some way? That's an interesting thing to leave behind. What am I contributing? You have 7 immortalities. You might want to write these 7 immortalities down. You have ideas that can last beyond your life, that are immortal. I try my best to put millions of ideas into the world that will help people in the world. I want to create original ideas that serve humanity. That's been my affirmation since I was 18. I create original ideas that serve humanity. I create original ideas that serve humanity. Ideas that last beyond your life. I feel confident that when I die, some of my ideas, some of my teachings, some of my principles, some of my quotes will still be going on. So that's one form of immortality. The second form of immortality is a business. Will that business live beyond your life? Some of the longest known businesses are 1,500 years. In Japan, there's a hotel business, 1,500 years old. Not bad. 1,500 years old, one business, an immortal business. There's a pub in Ireland that's vastly old, like 11 or 1,200 years old. So immortality can come in the form of a business. These are soul expressions. We go around and we say we're immortal souls. We go around and give it lip service, but very few people actually create immortal goals. It's all just lip service. All that religious stuff is lip service for most people. Hypocrisies. Question is are you living it? Not just touting it with words, but are you living it? Are you creating ideas that live in immortality? Are you creating a business that's going to go beyond your life and going to live for immortality? Do you have enough vision and foresight and strategic planning to develop that? The third one is your wealth. How perpetuity can you make your wealth? Did you build your wealth to be doing something philanthropic that contributes? The Nobel Prize was around $49,000 when it started. It was very small. Now it's around multiple 1.4 million. But hundreds of millions of dollars have been accumulated because of the Nobel Prize, a man that had a vision and is still going 130 years later almost, 20 years later. So here's a perpetuity, an immortality. Nobel will be an immortal. All the Nobel Prize winners, they won't forget Nobel. And all the people in the world, because they're the greatest contributors on the planet. So he invested in something that contributed to people that made a difference on the planet. What a brilliant philanthropic objective. The next one is a family. Did you create children that's passed down the lineage? Way back in pre-dynastic Egypt, it was the female that was the lineage liner. Now it's the male temporarily, but now it's becoming male and female again. But do you pass down the genes down? Did you pass down the name down? The family lineage. Then there's a social one. Did you make some sort of fame and notoriety where you won't be forgotten? Plato is still remembered 2,350 years ago. Plato, Socrates, Thales, yes, the Buddha, the teacher Fo of China. What type of immortality socially do you leave? I wrote a book called The Secrets of Immortality about this many years ago. The next one is your physical immortality. Now, you're not going to live physically beyond that, but your genes are. So this is your genetic expression down the lines, not just in family, but the genetic expression. Believe it or not, every time you do something that's authentic, you're epigenetically coding your genes, modifying the genes and causing change, point mutations or group mutations. And then your viruses, upon when you leave, your viruses will take your genetic code, extract that from your genes, Go and infect somebody with your genes and put your genes on anything that was productive in your life through lateral gene transfer, horizontal gene transfer into other people. So how much did you contribute to the germline? That's your physical immortality. And your spiritual immortality is not believing in some sort of a fantasy of a heaven in the afterlife. It's how much inspiration you contributed to the planet. How many people have you inspired to create their immortal legacies? Not fantasies, but real contributions. Something that really inspires. How many gamma synchronicities have you contributed? Keep records of the gamma synchronicities you contributed to other people's lives. That meant that you helped them become authentic for a moment, which is where they maximize their potential and are most efficient, effective, and where they're most resourceful and they're most philanthropic and they're most service-oriented. Those are the 7 immortalities. All of those help your wellness quotient, your well-being. Your autonomics are confirmed in balance in that state. If you can contribute, if I stand in front of 10,000 people or 100,000 people and I share a message with people and I'm inspired and I'm present and I'm in a moment of authenticity, the entire room will be in a trance state with tears. I've watched it. I got videos of it. 10,000 people motionless with tears in their eyes. That authentic state right there leaves an impact, and those people have a ripple effect, and it goes on, and you activate an immortality factor. That's why I set out when I was 18 how to master life, how to master the 7 areas of life. That's all I've been interested in since I was 18. 52 years focusing on that. And every one of us in this room here have the capacity to do something extraordinary with each of those areas.
Thank you, Dr. Tom, for that. Now, I'll just ask one more question, and then after that we can pass that over to the rest of the group and get some people asking some questions that they want to know the answer to. So my last question is about abuse and childhood trauma. What sort of concepts can people apply in their lives to be able to deal with these issues?
Well, first of all, abuse is a word that's, I would toss the entire thing. It's a silly word to be using. When somebody comes to me and says I was abused, it does not tell you anything. If I said to you, my father abused me, it doesn't tell you what he did. It's vague, it's broad, it's general. It's just a label that you chose to put on an act that you didn't see the benefit to. So that, just toss that. Because I have yet to see anything that a person's gone through. I always say that, no, there's nothing your mortal body can experience that your mortal soul can't love. So if you want to sit and be a victim of history all your life and not a master of destiny, you sit down and use the word abuse. Toss that from your vocabulary and say goodbye to that, because that's a victim thinking. What you do is you had an experience. You've had a stimulus. Now, how are you going to use it? If I take something you think is abusive and I ask you, so what's the benefit to you? And they go, there is no benefit. Well, then you're going to label it abuse all your life, and you're going to see it was all in the way, and you're going to blame something, and you're never going to empower your life. As Epictetus, the Greek philosopher, said, he was a Stoic philosopher. He said, first people blame others, then they blame themselves, and then they finally become awakened to realize there's nothing to blame. Blame is a false causality and a false attribution bias that people get trapped in when they don't have resourceful thinking. So what you do is you take this event in your life, beatings, rape, whatever it may be, and you ask yourself, how is it serving me? How can I use it to do something extraordinary? How is it on the way, not in the way? What's the benefit of this experience? And I assure you that what you'll find is your addiction to one thing draws in the opposite. Your addiction to protection draws in aggression. Your addiction to innocence draws in perpetrator of sexuality. Whatever you're addicted to, which is keeping you juvenilely dependent, you're drawing in the opposite to break your addiction, to make you grow up. And the very people that you're condemning and resenting are people that are representing a part of you that you're escaping, and this is teaching you something. So you ask, how is it on the way, not in the way? How is it helping me? And I guarantee you, there's not one thing you could throw at me that I couldn't, if you were willing to stay here, in a matter of minutes to hours, I could turn it into something you'll be grateful for. I do it every weekend in my life with people, and I don't find anything that can't be done. And I've seen more stuff than you can imagine in places around the world. There's nothing on this planet that has to be labeled that way. If you choose to get trapped in moral hypocrisies and fantasies about how life's supposed to be and stay a victim of history, well, don't expect to master your life and empower your life, because you're going to stay stuck blaming things and you don't get anywhere playing that game. You ask, how do I use this to my advantage? Can I give you an example?
Yes.
So I was in Florida teaching a breakthrough experience. And there's a lady there that had been going to a therapist for 35 years and over an abandonment by her mom. So she was blaming her mom, and she said she was abused by her mom, and she was abandoned by her mom, and she was unwanted, and all kind of stuff. And I just go, I just want to slap people around and that want to run those kind of bullshit stories. I said, so what did you think, to give her, to wake her up a bit, shake her up? I said, listen, what did you think you missed out on that you thought your mom was supposed to give you? Well, she didn't give me, she wasn't there for me. Okay, so let's take and find out. We made a list of all the things she thought she missed out on because her mommy wasn't there and left her, whatever. I said, okay, so who is the one that provided that trait? Because you didn't miss it. Please write this down. Nothing's ever missing. It's in a form you're not aware of. And because you're addicted to a form, you're thinking you missed out on it. But nothing's missing. And when things are missing, you live in disordered states. When you find out that nothing's missing, you live in the hidden order. You see the perfection of life. So I asked her, I said, so who provided you what you thought your mom didn't? And she said, well, my aunt. She was my surrogate mother and took care of me. My sister of my mom took care of me. Who else? And she finally said, my grandmother. Who else? Well, two of my best friends' moms. I would stay over at their houses a lot. Who else? Well, various teachers. Great. So when your mom wasn't there, these people took on that particular role that you wanted from your mom. She goes, yes, but you didn't think of that until just now when I asked you that. She goes, no, I didn't. But I can see now that that particular thing I wanted from her was in the form that I didn't see. Great. Now, what's the benefit of them providing it and not your mom? Well, I got to learn a different language. One of the teachers really took me on, and I got to, I was pretty good with language, and I got to pretty good with speaking, and I could read very well. And what's the benefit of the best mom's doing it? Well, I got to go places and do things that I definitely don't think my mom could have afforded. And I made her go and stack up the benefits of those people doing what she wanted her mom to do. And I said, now, what would have been the drawback if your mom had done all that? Because you have a fantasy. A fantasy is a positive without a negative, which makes your life a nightmare. Anytime you compare your current reality to a fantasy, you're not going to appreciate your life. And you're going to feel you're going to be abused. So what's the drawback if your mom had been there providing that? And she says, well, there would be no drawback. I said, no, that's a fantasy. I didn't ask not that. I asked, what's the drawback if your mom had been there? And I made her accountable. And then finally she stopped and she stared and she got tears in her eyes. And she got quiet. And then she goes, wow, I can't believe I've forgotten the statement that my aunt gave me when I was 4, when my mom left me. My aunt said to me something that I couldn't hear, refused to hear until this very moment. It's finally clicking. I said, what is it? She said, my mom, according to my aunt, had bipolar condition. And she was bathing me in a tub and turned on the hot water and then walked away while it was filling. And the water was too hot. It didn't start out hot. It got hotter and hotter as it went. And I almost scalded my body with being burned. And my mom forgot that I was in the tub. She was distracted with her bipolar condition. And I almost drowned and got burned. And my aunt said that to me. And the reason your mom is not there and left you was not because she didn't want you, not because she didn't love you, but because she felt that she couldn't take care of you and you deserve better than that, than what she could provide. So she gave her to the sister, and the sister had the means to be able to take care of him. Now, when she realized that in that moment, 35 years worth of psycho bullshit, psychobabble, blaming, dysfunctional crap that just got thrown out the window, and she finally realized that her mother loved her enough to give her a greater opportunity than what she could provide. And it's very difficult for a mother to give up a child unless she thinks that that child's going to have more advantage and disadvantage doing it. And her mom did not want her to see her in that condition and became kind of institutionalized. When she got that, her self-image changed, her drive changed, her looks changed. Now she's thankful for her mom. Instead of playing victim of history, she's now wants to go do something amazing with her life to let her know that her mom, because of the mom, I'm going to do something with my life. It had nothing to do with what happened. It had everything to do with her perception of what happened. And she refused to see things with both sides. And anytime you get lopsided in your perception, you pay an economic, psychological, and health price. But the truth was that she was loved and she didn't see it. So we go around and had another guy. He came to the breakthrough experience. He was in Sydney, Australia. He was 58 years old. At age 16, his father beat him and knocked him out, and almost knocked a tooth out. They had a major brawl. He was defiant to his dad. His dad kicked him out of the house and said, "You're out of here." He went on his own and didn't see his father for 42 years. He came to the program, and I had him go through and do my method on him. And all of a sudden, when he got through, he started to realize that he became an entrepreneur, very independent, having his own business, and becoming very driven as an individual because of that dynamic. And he never saw that his father is the one that gave him that drive by doing what he did. And then I asked him if all of a sudden his father was the way he hoped he would have been, the way he treated his brother, kind and gentle and protective. Would he trade places with his brother? He didn't know. My brother has been basically a baby all his life. He's never had his own job. He's dependent on my dad and waiting for my dad to die to get a small, penance from my dad. He says, my dad believed in me and he didn't believe in my brother. And he protected my brother and took care of him and kept him a child and took and gave me entrepreneurship. Challenges are what make people grow, not support. Support makes them stay juvenilely dependent. Challenge makes you precociously independent and make you come up with creative ideas that serve. So all of a sudden he finished it and he realized he had love for his father and he had tears coming out of his eyes, and he called his father that night. His father lived in a different country after 42 years. Then flew to see him on that Wednesday and spent the whole day Thursday with him. And got to communicate his love and appreciation, respect for his father. And his father was not this monster he had imagined. And his father died the following day. When I saw him the next time, he put his arms around me. He said, "Thank you for helping me love my father before he passed. I think my father was waiting for that before he could die." He was complete. All these years, I thought I was a victim. And the truth was, I was the one blessed because I never took the time to find the benefits of what I thought were terribles. There is no such thing as a one-sided event. There are no terribles without terrifics, or there are no terrifics without terribles. There's simply two pairs of opposite perceptions. If you take the time to see both sides, you'll feel love and you'll wake up your executive center. If you don't, you'll activate your symptom-driving parasympathetic or sympathetic perceptions and create symptoms to teach you how to perceive with love. So I don't use the word abuse. I just call it an experience. I've been shot at, I've been stabbed, I've had all kinds of things. If I had a competition with you, I bet I could compete with anybody in here for shit that's happened in your life. I used to live on the streets. I left home at 13. I've been through all kind of stuff. That is exactly what made me what I am today. I was told I would never read, write, or communicate, never amount thing, never go very far in life when I was 6 years old, 7 years old. Today, I'm research, write, travel, teach, everything I was told I would never do, I've excelled at. So don't go and give power to any victim mentality. Go and find out whatever's happened in your life. How is it on the way? How is it helping me get what I want to get in life? If you can ask the question, how, whatever's happening, how is it helping me fulfill my highest values, and answer that, and you answer that and keep answering that until you get a tear of gratitude, that thing you think is a crisis will turn into a blessing, and that obstacle will be an opportunity, and you will then say thank you, and you won't label anything abuse. Abuse is for people with narrow minds and don't want to take the time to see how opportunities are sitting before them.
So what's the way to connect with people who are very negative and stuck in that David Dawson mode? So
you only want to fix people on the outside to represent a part of you on the inside. Go find out where you're doing the same thing and thank them for revealing it to your life, and go prioritize who you're hanging out with and prioritize people that value you, and start going focus on making a difference in people's lives that are asking for help so they value you and you value you. And when they find out that you went on and done something extraordinary, they're going to probably be interested and want to do it, and they'll probably be ready to move on. The reason why people are negative is because they have fantasies about how their life is supposed to be. And then somebody's not cracking their fantasies. And so if you care about them, either crack their fantasy and hold them accountable, but don't sit there and try to push shit uphill all day long. You've got other things that are more important to do. Get your life together and go find out people that value you and hang out with people that value you and go and serve people. I got all kind of people that come on and send me stuff and give me up excuses why they can't do this. If I just tell them to go read this book and get on with your life. I can't sit there. If I rescued everybody that was sitting there in victim mentality all day long, I wouldn't get shit done in my life. I would devalue myself rescuing people. Don't rescue desperation. Invest in inspiration. Inspire them and teach. Give them insights. You know, if these are special people in your life and you want to kick their ass or whatever, that's fine. I don't mind doing that. I sometimes have to kick some people's ass. But I'm not going to sit there and rescue people and babysit people all their life. They got to stand up on their own 2 feet. Sometimes you got to be tough. Tough love is the only thing that liberates people like that. You rescue people and have compassion. I was speaking in Austria at the Milk Abbey, and the Dalai Lama was in my class. And I talked about the pitfalls and delusions of compassion. Compassion screws people up because what it is, it means word passion means to suffer, and compassion means to suffer with people. So sitting there going, oh, you poor thing, is not going to empower people. Ralph Waldo Emerson warned against that. He said, hit people with rough electric shocks and hit them with reality and make them accountable for their delusions, and they'll grow. But rescue them and support them in their delusions, and you'll join in their suffering. And that'll end up being now 2 people suffering in compassion. That's silly. So I basically kick people's butts and say, hey, look, here's how to do it. If you really want to get out of it, you'll do it. If you don't, call me when you're ready. And let them go. Get on with people. I got people out there that want my service. How many of you understand that? Don't try to push people that don't want your service. To those who believe, no proof is necessary. To those who don't, no proof is possible. Waste no words on those that seek not. If they value you, they'll pay for it. If they really want service, they'll do it. If they bitch and they keep doing the same thing, don't pay attention to their words, pay attention to their actions. And then to confront them. That will help them, not babysitting them. Some people don't like that, but I guarantee you, they get farther if you help them grow. They need it because people keep rescuing. How many of you know when you rescue people, they don't grow? Just keep rescuing. The enabler is basically disabling people constantly. Help people accountable. Yank the rug from under their reality. Shock their reality. Help them see their fantasies. Help them ground themselves with education, but don't rescue people. If they really want help, they'll come and learn the education to help them get out of it. I got people in my programs every week, and occasionally about 1 out of every 500 people want to play the victim. I just tell them, here's your money back. Go play victim. If you want help, you're smart, you'll stay here. You'll grow up. If you want to be a baby all your life, keep playing victim and blaming people. Time to grow up. You decide. And then what they do is they make a decision and they go, I don't want to leave here. Then grow up. This is grow up time. This is education time. I'm not here an umbilical cord to plug into. I'm not a tit to suck on. I'm here to make it grow. I don't even have it. My tits are too small to suck on anyway. I tried sucking on my own tits and I got hair in my mouth. It wasn't any fun.
Next question. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, this might be another keep butt question. In your experience, Dr. Demartini, why do you self-sabotage?
I don't use the word self-sabotage because I've never seen it exist. What it is people don't know what their values are and they're trying to live outside their highest values and they're creating resistance in the form of procrastination, hesitation, and frustration. And they're trying to do something they think is important because they're comparing themselves to other people and injecting other people's values and trying to live in other people's values. And then they self-defeat and they're designed to self-defeat because that's not authentic. And so it's basically trying to get them to set real goals that are really authentic, that are high in their values, that they have strategies to fulfill. And so it's not self-sabotage. I've never seen it. In 52 years, what I thought was self-sabotage, when I broke it down further, I just found out that people are trying to do something that's not really meaningful. And they think it is. And if I ask people all the time, how many of you want to be financially independent? They put their hands up. And I go, really? You want to be financially independent? Does your life demonstrate it? How many of you are? And all the hands go down. I said, you say you want to, but that's not what you really want. You want immediate gratification. You want to buy consumables that depreciate in value so you can have a house full of crap that you now can bitch about your debts. That's what your life is demonstrating. What people's lives demonstrate is what they want. What they say they want, don't buy unless it matches what they live. So self-sabotage is a term that people who don't understand values have used basically as a manipulation device to sell bullshit to people. So I basically don't buy into that. I'd say if you're doing something you think is self-sabotaging, what you think is important isn't important. Because what is important is what you keep doing. And you don't realize that. Now, if you want to change what's important, I can show you how to do that. I can change your values. When people say I keep sabotaging, no matter what I do, I can't get ahead financially, it's because they have a higher value on buying things, not deferring gratification, buying assets. So as long as they have a higher value on those things than they do on assets, they're going to keep thinking, I keep sabotaging financially. Because they keep having a value rescuing their friends and rescuing desperation and buying things that go down in value. And those are higher on their value list than actually buying assets. And I can do a value determination, find out where wealth is on it. I can tell you exactly how you're going to spend your money. Your hierarchy of values dictates how you spend your money. So you think it's sabotage because you're comparing yourself to somebody that's rich and you think that I should be like that. I wish I could be like that. I want to be like that. But that person has a different set of values than I do. And I'm expecting to live in their values, which is futile. And I keep procrastinating, hesitating, frustrating, and I keep not doing it. What am I doing wrong? Why do I beat myself up? Why do I keep self-sabotaging? Why do I have limited beliefs? All that stuff that's mumbo-jumbo's personal development stuff. Because we don't understand our values. That's why value determination is the first place to start if you want to master your life. And find out what's truly important to you and start structuring your life accordingly. Either set goals that match your values or change your values to match goals you say you want. But they have to be congruent if you want to master your life and not have, quote, self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is a byproduct of incongruency between what you say you want, what you actually want. Raise your hand if you grasp what I just said.
Thank you for being here, Dr.
Hold on. I'm going to say one more thing to say this. I had a gentleman recently, and he was a doctor. And he said, I need to consult with you. And I said, all right, what do you want to work on? He says, I want to bust my practice. I'm sitting in plateau. I can't seem to get growth in my business. Okay, great. what's the fear you face if all of a sudden you were to triple your business right now? What's the fear? He said, ooh, that's interesting. I said, what came up in your mind the moment I said that? He said, divorce. I said, so you're afraid if you grow your business, that the amount of effort it takes to do that, you're already on the edge with your relationship. If you do it, you'll go over the edge and you'll end up with a divorce. Then you'll have a fight over who owns the company and all the money and everything else. He says, I have 3 friends that they boosted their business and they end up in a divorce. And so I'm now associating growing business, divorce, growing business, divorce. And I have a high value in my family and marriage, and I don't want a divorce. And so I would rather sacrifice my business than I would that, even though I say I want to grow my business. So I said, as long as there's that incongruency and a moral dilemma that you're facing, I want to grow my business, but if I do, I'm going to do something I don't want. I said, so how is growing your business going to help your wife? He says, I don't know. She says, every time I put energy in the business, my wife says, I'm not there with the kids. I'm not there. And I don't even know. I don't feel like I'm having a relationship with you. I didn't ask. I said, how is growing your business helping your wife? Because if you can't see it, you're going to plateau because you don't want to undermine the wife. So I said, if you grow your business, could you go to your wife and say that a portion of the income is going to go towards a secured education for each of the children that you're raising? Is that something she wants, to have them to have a good education? Yes. Then the way you communicate in her values, if she sees that what you're doing is helping her get what she wants, she's going to encourage you to do it. But if she sees what you're doing is interfering with what she wants, she's going to discourage it until she burns out. So I made him go through and find out what his wife's values were. I found out how him doing his business helps us build his wife's values. She wants to have time for them. She wants the family vacation. She wants a little bit more of the house. So every time he grows his business, he needs to talk of growth of business in terms of the things that she wants. And it decreases the probability of having a conflict. And he knew that his buddies didn't do that. They got arrogant, thought that the wife was interfering with it. It ended up being a conflict. There was no value communications. And so he didn't want to do that. He didn't know how to communicate in people's values. So I trained him on how to do that. He communicated on that. And once he had a strategy on how every time he grew his business, how his wife would win, and he communicated to his wife, and she was inspired by that, excited about him growing. And he learned how to delegate more. So he had actually some time for being with his wife. His business in 3 months boomed, 3 months, because his mind was no longer blocking it. So sometimes what we say we want is not what we really want. What we really want is what we need to find out. And then structure our life accordingly. And then if we see obstacles, find out how those obstacles are on the way and link the values. And then the door opens again and we break through plateaus. But it's not sabotage. He didn't sabotage his practice. He was doing what he had on his values, making sure he didn't undermine his marriage. He just didn't have any strategies to get past that. I gave him a strategy and he broke past it. He wasn't afraid of a divorce now, and he grew his business. Raise your hand if you understand that subtle distinction there. Okay, you had a question. I interfered with your question.
So I found myself a bit stuck sometimes in moving forward. I make decisions to move forward and, start to find direction for myself. But I now realise I'm stuck to some grief, and it's unresolved grief. And it's to do with my father. There was issues I wish I had talked to him about in terms of values and where values sort of sat. But I didn't get the opportunity because he was diagnosed with dementia and then eventually passed away. But I still carry it and I get stuck.
You carry grief?
I carry the grief. I also carry, I guess, the inability to move forward sometimes because I wasn't able to resolve some of the issues that we had.
Thank you, Esmeri. Dr. John, just to remind you, on Tuesday, we're dealing and we're going into grief on Tuesday. So I'm just bringing that up to...
Okay, so are you going to be there?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Can we defer that till Tuesday? Because I'll be glad to take you through a little grief process and dissolve that.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Esmeri. Who else has a question? You've got an awesome opportunity to ask a question. Yes. please.
Hello, Dr. John. If you're a person with a label and you don't like yourself and
I'm not hearing very well. It's echoing. Pardon me for that. I don't mean to have to make you get up, but if I could come there and just sit right in the middle of you, I'd be probably good. I wouldn't mind being off. I don't know that there's only about 3 or 4 guys there. How did you guys get invited to heaven?
yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Dr. John, if you're a person in dorsal vagal and you hate yourself and you don't know how, can't get past like not knowing how to love yourself and open your heart to yourself, how do you sort of get through that and work out what your values are? Because
Okay, well, there's I'm going to hit you hard with this one, so get ready to get a pillow to let her land on the ground in a minute. All right. First of all, the value determination process is simply free on my website. You can determine your values with very short time in 30 minutes and start looking at your values. That's a simple process to do. It doesn't take but about 30 minutes of your time. Is that okay if I give them that drdemartini.com? Just go to it's free, it's private. Just do the value determination there. But do it again and again and again until you're absolutely certain with a tear in your eye you've been honest, because many people want to lie about what they think is important. I've been doing value determination 46 years. I've seen all the games people play. They want to write down what they think it ought to be, should be, supposed to be, etc., instead of write down the truth. If you write down the truth of what the questions are, you get somewhere. If you write down the other, you're just dodging the truth for yourself. But just know this. Now, this is going to hurt what I'm going to say. Everybody write this down. You can never beat yourself up unless you're overbuilding yourself up. There's a thing called the moral licensing effect. You might want to read up on it. Moral licensing effect. And the moral licensing effect says, and we've all done it, the second you do something you're proud of, you automatically give yourself give yourself permission to do something you're ashamed of. How many of you have gone out and worked out and maybe got your abs in shape or whatever, got your butt in shape? You know, your ass is off the ground and your boobs are up in the air and everything else. And then all of a sudden that night, you gave yourself permission to eat a little bit more and drink a little bit more. Raise your hand if you've done that because you worked for it. You earned it. Okay. This is called the moral licensing effect. Because I went on the gym and I walked around the gym for 5 minutes, I can eat that extra donut or something. Now, this moral licensing effect is also in reverse. How many of you also pigged out and then got motivated more than usual to go out to the gym the next day or something, or go walk or something? This is called the moral licensing effect. This is part of a homeostatic system inside our brain to make sure we're authentic. And it's part of hedonic adaptation to keep us at a set point. Now, the same thing in our psyche. Whenever we beat ourselves up, we're building ourselves up somewhere, but we're not aware of it. So we're judging somebody arrogantly somewhere, and we're basically having to counterbalance it with the beating of ourselves up. Now, when we beat ourselves up, the most common reason is because we've injected the values of others and we're expecting to live in a fantasy. We're expecting to live outside our values or in a one-sided world. We're expecting peace without war, pleasure without pain, happy without sad, kind without cruel, nice without mean. We're expecting considerate without inconsiderate, and joy without sorrow, or bliss without piss. Anytime we expect one side without the other, we've got an unrealistic expectation. You like that bliss without piss? I saw that. Anytime you expect a one-sided world, you're going to beat yourself up because you're not going to get it. Because that's a fantasy. A fantasy is a positive without a negative. A nightmare is a negative without a positive. A truth and objective is one that has both. How many would agree when you get in a relationship, there's pleasures and pains, hugs and slugs, positives and negatives in somebody. The longer you're with them, the more you want to hug and slug them. So if you expect a hug without a slug, you got a delusion. And then if you try to get life to fit that, you're going to beat yourself up because you can't get it to fit that. Because it's not designed to, because you maximally grow at the border of support and challenge. You have to have equilibrium to maximally grow. So you got to find out what you're comparing your life to, because sometimes we inject the values of others, expect ourselves to be doing something that's not really valuable to us, but we think it is because we think it should be. And we hear ourselves saying, I ought to, I'm supposed to, I got to, I have to, I must, I need to, I should. Anytime you hear that language inside your head, you're trying to live in somebody else's values. And you're comparing yourself to somebody else, and you have a fantasy about trying to live in other people's values instead of your own. And it's futile. And you'll beat yourself up. And you're designed to. Why? Because your brain has to punish you for trying to be authentic to get you back onto authenticity. So self-depreciation is not your enemy. Self-depreciation is a kick in the ass to guide you back to authenticity. But you keep holding on to the fantasy. You keep trying to be somebody you're not. You keep holding on to a one-sided world. You keep expecting others to be living in your values. As long as you have unrealistic expectation, you're going to beat yourself up, and you're designed to. And it's not a weakness or a flaw or problem. It's simply a feedback to guide you to make sure you're setting realistic objectives and realistic expectations on life. And life doesn't have one side. Life has both sides. So does everybody else around you. So does every goal you have. Every goal that you strive for will have pleasure and pain. If you think it's going to have more pleasures and pains, you're going to be broadsided by the pains as it comes. When you have embraced both sides, you're having a real objective. Your executive center is designed to transform fantasies into true objectives. That's what it's for. That's why you have the executive center in the forebrain, to mitigate risks and to set real goals. But if you have a fantasy, you're going to end up beating yourself up. So if you go to the moment when you're beating yourself up and look at the content reveals what the unrealistic expectation is. Either you're setting a goal that's not in line with your values, you're expecting something more one-sided than the other, or you're expecting an outcome without a strategy. Many people haven't expected. When I had a lady come to me one time after the friggin' movie The Secret came out, she came to me and she says, Dr. Demartini, what am I doing wrong? I've read the book 6 times. I watched the movie 20 times. And no matter what I do, when I go out to my mailbox, there's not $1 million check in my mailbox. Okay? I said, ma'am, grow up. Don't live in la la land. If you want to increase the probability of having $1 million check in there, make sure your family, when you're born and you incarnate, come in some sort of wealthy aunts or uncles that are going to pass it on when they die, if you're expecting that. Or why don't you get off your ass and go to work and serve people so you increase the probability of having $1 million check in your bank account? Come on, get grounded, get real, quit living in delusional fantasy lands. I'm not against visualizing. I'm not against affirming. I'm not against thinking about things. But I guarantee you, if you think, visualize, and affirm and focus and feel inspired by something that's high in your value and you have a strategy to achieve it, you're going to get it way more than if you just live in fantasy land. So ground yourself and make sure what you're striving for and what you're expecting is real. It's really important to you. It's really on your highest values, and you really have a strategy to achieve it. And you're not putting unrealistic expectations on yourself or others to live outside your values or them living outside their values. And watch how you feel magnificent when you do that.
Great question. Who's next? Put your hand up. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
I like this. I pretended I couldn't hear you so I could get the women to come up close.
Hi, Dr. John. Thanks for your time. I'd like to just, if you could just elaborate, you touched on the element of loss of what we're seeking and gaining of what we're trying to avoid. That was under sort of stress, and then you touched on eating disorders and things like that. But I just wondered about the correlation. You also mentioned sort of buying things that we might have kind of feeling that we had a lack of, or trying to make up value. If perhaps if we didn't have things growing up and then we're just buying things, subconsciously. I just wondered if you could perhaps elaborate on that kind of area.
That's a great question. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, so listen to this. How many women here remember their wedding day? Okay. And how many of you noticed that probably 10 days to 2 weeks out, You were governed. You didn't pig out. You knew you're going to be in a wedding dress. You might know you might be going off to a beach party or whatever. And you got yourself in shape to get ready for that wedding dress. Raise your hand if you were more disciplined those 2 weeks before than you probably normally are. Put your hand up. No? Nobody got any more discipline beforehand. Okay, well, that's rare. Most people, when they get married, they have some discipline before they get married to make sure that they look their best at their wedding dress. Basically, did all of you marry blind husbands? Is that what it was?
Someone that said that like, it didn't matter how big I was, that it just moved the doors wide.
Okay, well, what I'm trying to say is when you have something deeply inspiring, deeply important, deeply meaningful that you're about to do, you have discipline. If you don't fill your day with deeply inspired and meaningful actions, which bring blood glucose and oxygen into the forebrain, which gives you self-governance, you're going to be in the amygdala. And the amygdala is going to let impulses make you go and be a consumer. Consumerism is a byproduct of buying things on the outside because you don't feel fulfilled on the inside. And what you do is you buy overpriced brands, make everybody else wealthy at your expense, and get further in debt and then fill a house with a clutter. 25% of a house, I want you to just wake up on this and think about this. 25% of your house is storage. Take your garage, take all the closets, take all the pantries, and take the rooms that you rarely even go in, that you got shit in that you don't ever use and don't do anything with. And 25% of a house is storage. Now, if you get $1 million house, if you're from Australia, most houses are at least $1 million. If you have $1 million house, that's $250,000 you're paying for storage. Now, your mortgage is 25 years or so. By the time you pay it, you're paying $750,000 to store shit that's going down in value that you think is important. It's not. And then you wonder why you can't get ahead because you didn't think about where you're spending your money. And when you first had a garage, you used to be able to get a car in there. After a while, you got so much stuff in there, you can't even get your own car in there hardly. Raise your hand if you grasp what I'm saying. So what you do is you go out and buy and fill yourself up from the outside instead of being fulfilled on the inside. And people that are very inspired by what they do feel fulfilled. They don't have to buy as much. They prioritize their spending. They prioritize what they buy. I live on a ship. I got a beautiful place on a ship. I don't buy shit. Excuse my expression. I don't want to sink my ship anyway. I don't buy. I don't buy a bunch of stuff. I may buy a new suit or a couple of suits here and there, and I'll get rid of the other two and give that to somebody and get a new one. But I buy by priority. If you don't spend your money according to priority and you let the external world make you buy through impulse, you're not self-governed. And when you're not living by your highest priority and letting your executive center run you, your amygdala is going to be extrinsically driven and motivated by impulses, by sales gimmicks and salespeople and comparison of other people you envy. Go, oh, I wish I had what they had. And all that's distracting and costing and keeps you in debt. So if you want to not be impulse oriented, prioritize your life. Fill your day with something deeply meaningful. How many of you have ever gone out and done something and made a contribution and service to people? And while you're doing it, you can go by and you don't even think about food while you're serving people. Raise your hand. You don't even think about it. You're focused on service and then you'll get to eat afterwards. And if you feel great about yourself, you'll be more likely to eat wisely. But if you feel stressed and unfulfilled, you're going to over or under eat as a result of that because you're throwing your amygdala off. So my advice is to fill your day with very high priority things so you have fulfillment in life. And you don't have to overfill yourself with other stuff. Because eating is one form of amygdala. Alcohol, food, drugs, anything, consumerism, accumulation of stuff, all those are basically amygdala systems of filling things that aren't fulfilled. Fulfill yourself from within. You don't have to fulfill yourself from without. It simplifies your life. And then you can buy things that are priority. Buy things that are priority. And I'm nothing against raising lifestyle, but just buy things by priority. Buy food by priority. Ask yourself, is what I'm eating going to maximize my performance? Or is it going to just make me feel and taste good and then regret it later? Beware. I don't live to eat. I eat to live. Whatever I eat is for maximum performance. And I've been steady. I don't fluctuate 2 pounds up and down, is it? All these years. I don't fluctuate. I don't have this eating disorder response because I'm filling my day with what I do. I delegated lower priority things. I stick to the highest priority things. Highest priority things for me is my teaching, researching, writing, and traveling. When I finish this tonight, I start another program tomorrow, just a matter of hours from now. I continually do what I love doing. If you do that, you'll eat to not to for immediate gratification. You'll eat to maximize your goals. How many know if you got really, really something important to do? Maybe the wedding wasn't it, because maybe you don't give a shit about the wedding. Maybe that you just you just had to have a man because you couldn't find a dog that paid you. But the point is, but the reality is, if you got something really, really, really important and meaningful to do, you will have discipline to get it done. So find what's important to you and fill your day with things that are important, or otherwise, outside influence is going to run your life. If you're not intrinsically driven, you're going to be extrinsically called to do so. If you're not intrinsically called to into an inspiration, you're going to be extrinsically driven by outside influences. How many of you know when you're really busy doing something important, it's easy to say no to people that want to take up your time? But if you don't have anything going down, they'll take up your time, and opportunists will grab your time. You have to value your time. If you don't value your time, you're not valuing your life. Ask yourself, what's the highest priority action I can do today to help me fulfill my life, and stick to it? Anything less is, why would you want to do something less important than what's most important? Every time you do high priority things, your self-worth goes up, your eating goes down. Every time you do low priority things, your self-worth goes down, your eating goes up. Basic law.
Okay, so I wanted to ask about the fear of loss and the fear of gain. I can comprehend the fear of loss. I don't really understand the fear of gain. So for example,
Bills.
What do you mean?
Bills. You ever had bills come in and hit your mailbox with bills more than you want to handle?
Isn't that a fear of loss? Because you lose.
No, it's a fear of gain of something you don't want. The fear of loss of something you want, fear of gain of something you don't want. You have any friends that you don't want to hang out with anymore?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a fear of them calling and wanting to take up your time? Sure you do, probably over the years.
I get.
So anything that challenges you, you would rather not have to spend time on. Anything that supports you, you want to. So you fear the loss of that which supports you. You fear the gain of that which challenges you. That's human behavior. That's the amygdala.
So somebody that is not eating would be in fear of something supporting them. Is that
no? Fear. If they have a fear of something that's challenging them, makes them stop eating. If a predator comes up to you, and you're going to have to run, are you focused on eating?
No. So
if you have prey come upon you that support your values, are you focused on eating?
okay, so somebody that's not eating is in fear of being challenged in their life.
Perceiving of gain of challenge. They're preoccupied by the thought that something's challenging keeps coming in their life. It shuts down their eating.
Okay.
But the fear of loss is something they want, stimulates it.
Right. Okay, thank
One's
you.
ghrelin. That's ghrelin and leptin. These are the two hormones that are involved in there. One's in the fat tissue, one's in the gut, the stomach. These hormones.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
You ever had somebody? You ever had your kids do something to drive you crazy?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and whenever they come to you and ask for something you don't want to have to deal with, you ever had that?
Yes.
Okay, that will turn you off on eating.
Right, okay. Because you want to avoid dealing with it.
Yeah, because anytime anytime you're challenged and you got sympathetic system, it shuts down eating. The parasympathetic turns it on, the sympathetic system turns it off.
Right.
Imagine this, imagine a little town in the 1800s or 1700s. And all of a sudden, everybody's feasting in the center, and they're feasting and making love and making kids. And they're having food and wine and feasting, and they're making love, and they're having kids, and they're having fun. It's parasympathetic. All of a sudden, they find out somebody's coming, 1,000 fighters are coming up to the walls of the town, and they're about to go on and fight. What happens?
Okay, I understand the fight and flight response and how it shuts down those systems in your body. So
Yeah, because the digestive system is shut down.
okay, so somebody
There's
that's not eating is in like a fight and flight response.
there's a fight or flight without it even being known. There's a conscious fight or flight.
Yes. Okay.
Because what happens is the goblet cells that secrete mucus, the serous cells that secrete materials that are fluids, the peristaltic action in the gut, digestive system is shut down at that moment. So it shuts down food with leptin. It shuts it down. It says, no, right now we've got an emergency to deal with. Eating is not priority right now. It's dangerous. If you eat right now, predator's going to get you.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Yeah.
Great question.
I hope everything I say makes sense. I try to.
Even the jokes make sense.
Yeah. I had a dream not to be a senseless person.
Very good.
Frank,
Hi, Dr. John. Could you touch on finding purpose, please?
could you touch on finding purpose?
Can I discuss and touch on that?
Yes.
Okay, your life demonstrates your purpose, but it may not match the fantasy you wish. So I'm gonna give a story. This will help make sense out of it. I'm in London. I'm teaching the Breakthrough Experience. We're not too far from Kensington Palace. And on a Sunday afternoon, on the second day, a lady comes to me and she says, Dr. Demartini, and we're writing out a mission statement, a purpose statement. That's the exercise we're in. And I gave him my instructions. This lady puts her hand up. She says, Dr. Demartini, I just don't know what my purpose is. And I said, you're getting ready to get beaten here by me. So I walked up to her in the aisle. I said, I don't know what my purpose is. I said, what do you do every single day that nobody has to remind you to do, that you spontaneously do, and you love doing it every single day, that nobody has to remind you to do? And she says, I don't know. I said, I didn't ask that. Answer my question. Don't dodge the question. What do you do every single day that nobody has to remind you to do it? You do it spontaneously. You love doing it every single day. And after hitting her a bit, I basically said, answer the question. She finally did. She said, spend time with my kids. I said, is most of your day with your kids? Yes. Okay, then I went through the value determination. So if I was to watch you with a drone and look at you 24 hours a day, would your kids be around you most of the day? Would you be spending most of your time and filling most of your space around your kids? She said, yes. When you're with your kids, do you always have energy around them to be able to accomplish what you have a dream for your kids? Yes. Is most of your money, whenever you get money, going to something related to kids? Yes. Are you organized around the way you're dealing with them? Because it sounds like you're homeschooling them or something. I do homeschool my kids. I said, is that organized? She said, it has to be. Yes. Are you disciplined? Every day we do it. Do you think, visualize, and affirm raising and training your beautiful children and educating your kids? She said, that's what I've dreamed about for a long time. Yes, that's what I think about and focus on. When you talk to people, is it usually about your kids? Yes. What inspires you is raising beautiful children and teaching and educating kids and making them great kids? Yes. Are the top 3 goals that you've had in your life that are coming true, is it about raising kids? Yes. When you study and read and go to bookstores and go online and stuff, is most of the stuff you read all related about raising and teaching kids? She says, yes, that's all I buy. I said, your highest value is raising beautiful children. You're a mother and teacher. I said, the only reason why you're not honoring that as a mission is because you're comparing yourself to somebody else. Who is it? And she says, well, I think I know. I said, who is it? She says, well, I got this woman that's got this big business. She's got 2 kids and she's got help and kind of a nanny, but she's raising a family. And I keep thinking I should have a business. Everybody's expecting me to be a business. I should have a business. I should have a business. I ought to have a business. I'm supposed to have a business, but no matter what I do, I always have some emergency and I have to go back to my kids. I never seem to get the business off the ground. I said, the woman that has the business has a hierarchy of values that has business high up on the values and children are second and third or lower. You have children at the top and your business is teaching children. She said, well, that's the only thing I ever wanted to do. I said, your mission is a mother and teacher, but you keep comparing it to somebody that has different sets of values. Is there anybody else you're comparing to? Yes, I've got this other woman that's got a very wealthy husband and she does social contribution and she's philanthropic and stuff and she's got kids. And I compare myself to others, envy some of their behaviors, inject those values, cloud the clarity of my own, attempt to be second at being somebody else instead of first at being me. I said, that's what's making you think you don't know what your purpose is, but your life is demonstrating your purpose all along. And she said, is that good enough to be a teacher raising kids? I said, Rose Kennedy's mission statement was, I dedicate my life to raising a family of world leaders. Is that what you'd like to do, is do something extraordinary with your kids? She says, that's all I've ever wanted to do. And tears came out of her eyes. I said, welcome to your mission. And she cried and I hugged her on the spot. And she cried for 5 or 10 minutes and probably 25 women in that room were crying at the same time. And people then applauded her. I said, you have the courage to be you and quit trying to be somebody you're not, or you'll destroy your life and you'll think you're sabotaging. You'll think there's something wrong with you. You'll think you're beating yourself up. All that crap is simply because you're not honoring who you are. And she wrote out a magnificent, beautiful mission statement when she went back to her seat. So our mission is an expression of our highest value, and top 3 particularly, but the top one is the most. Find out what that is and set sail as captain of your ship, master of your fate, and quit dodging the truth about what you want in life. Or change your values to match what you say you want. But don't expect to accomplish things if you don't have congruence between what you want and what your values are. It won't happen. Your hierarchy of values dictates your destiny. Find out what's highest. I'll tell you where you're headed. Your purpose is always an expression of your highest values, and that's where you're most objective. And because you're most objective, you're most neutral, and your voids are coming from all the judgments because you're too proud or too humble to admit what you see in others inside you. And all those disowned parts inside leave you empty. That's why you feel empty when you judge. And all that emptiness wants to be fulfilled. So when you follow your highest value, you fulfill that highest value. That's the highest priority thing that any human being can do. And that's been known for thousands of years. But most people, for some reason, overlook it because they're swayed by religion, politics, and people for hedonistic purposes. They're distracted away from what really is meaningful in life. And the distinction between us and the animals is our ability to follow meaning, not just hedonistic pursuits. Raise your hand if any of that makes sense now.
Okay, thank you for the question. We'll just wrap up, John. We've got about 3-4 minutes to wrap up. So do that. Yeah. So thank you for today, Dr. John, for being here with us, Dr. Demartini for being here. We'll have some great questions for you. So you might be under pressure on Tuesday. So you might need to bring your floaties with you. I'm sure these people are going to be very, very intelligent and inspired in their next meeting together. One of the questions that I wanted to ask today, but we're actually running out of time, and I know it's relevant to people, so we'll touch on it the next day. It's about people in the room here who say, you know, I live life solo. I don't want a man in my life, but we know that's just completely unauthentic. It's not even part of their genetic expression. And we'll touch on that in our next meeting. The pub in Ireland that you're talking about is a pub called the Brazen Head, and it's on the banks of the River Liffey. And when Strongbow, the leader of the Viking nation, raided Ireland to pillage and rape us all, and they stopped at a spot along the river, which was a watering hole where they made meat, which is like poutine from potato skins. And they built a building around it, and it became a pub called the Brazen Head. So it's 1,200 years old. And myself and my 7 friends drank there every Thursday night for years before I left Ireland. And just after I left Ireland, we stayed great friends. They were my brothers forever. But when I left Ireland, I married just before I left. And when I left Ireland, I divorced her. And my friends left me because I didn't meet their values. So I had a loss, a massive loss, because in Ireland at that day, you don't get divorced and you don't leave your wife, but I did. And my friends left me, and I was very traumatized because of that. But it was then in doing all of this work that I realized I would never be able to meet all of their unreasonable expectations. I'm human. I have my human needs, my human desires, my human demands. She just wasn't my desire and demand at the time. So in doing that then, I realized afterwards that I really had no loss because of the loss of my friends. When I realized that I could never meet all of their expectations, that their friendships were conditional, I couldn't meet those conditions. I needed to be me and be the authentic me and not mold my life to win my friends back again. Because I could have gone back with her and said, oh, I'm back with her now, so please be my friend again. And we maybe in our next meeting talk about the loss of a loved one and how we deal with that also.
No problem. I'd be glad to do that. Yeah,
Right.
if you're not being crucified, you're probably not on purpose. That's part of the game.
Thank you, Dr. John.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. John Demartini. That was fantastic.
Did they survive me? Did you all survive me? Okay. You're look at it. Now that I'm leaving, look how excited they are. Look at that.
Not true.
They were solemn, just sitting going, oh my God, we have to endure this guy. Now that I'm leaving. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Dr. John. We will see you in a few days coming.
Have a fantastic time there. You're in good hands and a great space. And thank you for giving me the chance to be with you for these few hours. And I look forward to seeing you. I guess I'll be Tuesday or whenever it is. I've got a couple of seminars between now and then, so I'll see you at that perfect time. Love you all. Enjoy. Thank you both of you. Raymond, Antonella, thank you, everybody. Love you all. See you then.
Bye.